my official gavel. I'm going to call to order the Tuesday, January 16th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting. Ms. G, please take the roll.
Ms. Hockenberry?
Here.
Mr. Krasner?
Here.
Mr. Rankin?
Here.
Mr. Stevens?
Here.
Ms. Teets?
Here.
Mr. Wodiska?
Here.
Thank you.
We usually have a speaker series. This evening we do not have any. The next item is adoption of the agenda. Can I get a motion to adopt this evening?
I move to adopt the agenda as stated.
Second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the next item is election of officers. We do this once a year, and we did not have a meeting on that. So we need to elect a chair and a vice chair. So can I get a nomination for chair?
I nominate Mr. Russ Wodiska to continue as chair.
Second. That was easy. Any other nominations?
No.
So this Chief, can you take a roll call vote for that?
Yes,
Can you take a roll call vote?
certainly. Ms. Hockenberry?
Yes.
Mr. Krasner?
Yes.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Teets?
Yes.
Mr. Wodiska?
Yes. Thank you, everybody.
I would like to nominate, are you ready?
Yeah,
The
let's,
next
do you want to have a
one.
nomination for vice chair?
Absolutely. I was all ready to go. I would like to nominate Mr. Rankin for vice chair.
I'd
He's
like
done
to
such a
second
good
that.
job.
Is there any other nominations for vice chair? Not hearing any, can you take a roll call vote?
Ms. Hockenberry?
Yes.
Mr. Krasner?
Yes.
Mr. Rankin?
Sure.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Teets?
Yeah.
Mr. Wodiska?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Fantastic. Okay. We have a bunch of petitions as the next item on the agenda. However, these are petitions for items not on the agenda. Don't worry, we'll get there soon enough. But I don't see any that are not related to Broad and Washington. Just make sure. Is there, there's none. Are there anyone who wants to speak on items that are not on tonight's agenda? If so, raise your hand or speak to Mrs. G, but I'm thinking that the answer is no. Anybody? All right, terrific. I'm going to close the receipt of petitions. There's no old business, and then new business. We're moving on to the annual report to City Council. We are to review and adopt this. And I believe sometime in the very near future, I am to present this to City Council. Do we have a date that I'm on their agenda, or?
We do not have you on a date until you adopt, as a commission, the report.
Okay. All right, let's bring that up. Has everybody had a chance to review this? Say yes.
Yes.
Really?
We all nodded.
Yes, I reviewed it, and anybody have any comments? We had a busy year, as this is taking a second to pull up. As it indicates, we had 17 regular meetings, and then we had 29 work sessions over the past year, and weighed in or adopted numerous proposals, which are included in this 10-page report, 9-page report. Are there any comments on it? Seriously? None? I don't. Okay. I didn't have any that accurately reflected the votes and the items that we addressed. Okay, so I don't think I need a roll call vote for this, do I? Just
I think you do, and then if you would want to appoint someone to present it to council.
You appoint yourself.
okay. Can we have a roll call vote to adopt the annual report and a motion to have somebody named Russ present to City
Yes,
Council?
I was going to suggest that.
Okay. Can I have a motion, please?
I'll move that we adopt the annual report for 2017 and appoint the chair to present it to council at a date to be determined.
I'll second it.
Can we get a roll call vote then?
Of course. Ms. Hockenberry?
Yes.
Mr. Krasner?
Yes.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Teets?
Yes.
Mr. Wodisca?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Moving right along.
As I'm saying, great, as I was thinking about this, do I even need to be on their agenda or just do the speaking in their, standard,
You could probably,
just show up? I think I get 10 as a member of, okay, I will figure that out, that date.
Oh, the CACT.
Okay, now we have the assignment of the commissioners to serve as member liaisons to other boards and commissions, including the Campus Coordinating Committee.
Yeah, that's the new one.
That's the new one. We're moving faster than I can open these files. I'm getting there. So, does anyone have any adjustments they'd like to make? I reviewed this past week, and Mr. Dijon is the only glaring change, but does someone have a conflict or a reason that they do not want to continue?
Well, I think the CACT is
It's
missing.
busy. I'm on the CACT, at least nominally. I'm the liaison, and that's not listed on there. But I'd be happy to continue doing that. As far as picking up Mr. Dijon's assignment, it's possible I could do that as well for the AAB. Assuming
so-
attendance is not mandatory at other meetings.
Well, so we being the city council, is currently interviewing other people as we speak. Those are on the calendar. I would like to start out the year having these positions filled, but I think that once we have a new member, I would like to reapportion, certainly the Architectural Advisory Board, if that's but I'd like to fill it tonight, in case this process takes longer. And then if there's some other one that has a conflict, if someone could remain on it, if that person can remain on it, and then we talk to the new member to try to make that adjustment once they arrive. That would be my starting position on that.
What night does AAB meet?
I think they're on Wednesdays.
the first Wednesday of the month.
That's what I thought, because I've gone to a couple of theirs.
That's Parks and Rec, too.
And what's CACT do?
CACT is on Tuesdays.
Tuesday? Would a Wednesday work better than a Tuesday?
It depends. I mean, I'll be willing to give it a shot, at least in the interim, until we have another person.
Okay, that's,
Assuming everyone,
Very-
unless anyone else wants it. Anyone else wants it, by all means, speak up.
Don't look at me.
Your
My
name's all
plate
over
is
this
totally
place.
full.
no.
Unless people want to fight me for all my positions.
I'm happy to be an alternate. if you need one.
Does anybody have any changes they want to make to the current liaison positions? Fantastic. Okay, so just for the record, should I read in the new appointments here, Ms. G?
I don't think that's necessary.
You don't think that's necessary? Okay, so let's please make sure we add the CACT to this list, which Brent, Mr. Krasner is serving on. The AAB, he is also going to replace Mr. Dijon.
Should we specify for EDC that it's a chair and the vice chair instead of the chair and one commissioner? Because that's what we've been doing for a couple of years now.
Oh, the EDC, yeah.
Yeah.
What?
We can, who's been, do
I've been going to the
You've been-
EDC meetings, yeah.
you think that's necessary? He's also a
No.
commissioner?
I guess it
mean, do you
doesn't
think you
matter.
want it as, are you suggesting as a standard policy, it'd be the chair and the vice chair?
Because it's kind of what we've done for a while.
That's how it was with Ruth.
Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, when I was chair, I was the chair and the vice chair were the people who went.
Okay.
And then other people show up for fun, like Lindy and
Tim's there all
Steve,
the time.
Tim, yeah.
Crashing.
You mean I don't have to show up to that?
EDC crasher.
Semi-retired people, too much time.
Just wait.
You're, oh.
Okay, so Ms. G, can you please alter the Economic Development Council assignment in 2018 to say chair and vice chair?
Certainly.
All right,
But
so-
like, I've been alternate to that forever, I guess. Haven't I? I just thought I was on it.
You just always show up.
Okay. Oh, gee.
Oh, yeah.
So
I'll have to change my
the last
calendar.
one was the, our new one is the Campus Coordinating Committee, and I believe that is.
That's supposed to be you.
It's one member, and I believe it's supposed to be me, and I would be very much pleased to be part of that again. So I'm going to appoint myself, unless there's some significant objection, but my understanding is that it's supposed to be the chair.
But all notices will be public, right?
All those will be public. It's quite a complicated, I mean, if we want to bring it up and talk about who's on this committee, I don't think
No,
that's-
I don't want.
They sent us a memo.
I know that, there's only
They will be public.
one of
meetings.
us, but there will be public meetings with public notices.
They are. And the group is made up of 2 city council members, 2 school board members, 1 planning commissioner, 1 member of the PTA, 1 member of the EDA, 1 member of PEAC, which I knew at one point and I can't remember,
It's the staffs.
the staff union, the construction manager, and the superintendent. So that's the group of 10?
That's what I get.
Yeah, okay. So I'll be the representative of that, so if you could make a note of that.
Do you know they'll be forming additional task groups that we could participate as?
Right.
Do you know this proposed schedule?
I do not. I'm hoping it's Friday morning when the economic working group has been meeting. Does that work well for my schedule? But I'm certainly not calling the shots on
Oh,
that.
yeah, no.
Okay, I think that,
But the notices will go out to everybody, not just to you.
if it's not, I'll make sure to forward.
Thank you.
I don't know the answer, but I believe that's
I'm
true.
looking for something else to do,
Fair enough.
Well,
particularly when it has to do with schools.
currently, if you go on the city site and you sign up for their thing, I get
Oh, I
notices
know.
of all our
I know.
meetings and the
Just want to
council
make sure,
meetings and-
yeah, I get notices of
Like, you can
everything,
have
too.
the generated email that tells you what meetings are happening and
Yeah.
when they're being moved. I don't know if the campus meetings though are part of that.
If you are not receiving it, let me know. I'll see, but otherwise I'll forward it.
Okay, great, thank you.
It's not secretive.
No, I know it's not.
Okay. The next is, item C is discussion rules of procedure review, including electronic participation. The version I got appeared to me to be the one from prior to last year's meeting. Because there was a bunch of edits I had made at the last year at this time, and I didn't see those incorporated. And I know we had discussed about it. So I'm going to just start by saying there's some stuff in the history, 'cause I think this is a repeat of what we said last year.
Yeah.
On page 3, starts at line 100 to 106. It stops as of 2010. And we had discussed updating this through the current period. We had, and we have taken many steps towards the comprehensive plan over the last 8 years. So I just thought this history needed to be brought up to date. That's the other part. And I do remember talking about this last year. We then had another section about the order of our meetings, which was no longer representative of how we had done it. Now I gotta find it. Bear with me here a second.
Page 15?
Page 15. That. Yes, exactly. Oh, no, I'm sorry, it's the bottom of, I'm placed on the computer, bottom of page 16, order of business.
Yeah. That's what it is.
So we had, we've been doing it differently, for quite a while, so I just wanted to update this and really to represent what we got here on tonight's agenda. The call to order, the roll call, adopt agenda, and then we move quickly into old and new business,
I have a quick question.
as opposed to going into the commissioner reports and receiving.
That's always at the end nowadays.
I was thinking when we do these meetings like this and we have this audience, and I'm sure they're here to watch us talk about our procedures.
I know.
and voting. Is there any way to structure the agenda so that when we have a big audience, that goes first or as close to?
Well, when we adopt the agenda at the beginning, we can always alter that. At the beginning of any meeting, we can.
Yeah,
We can
I
call
would-
audible
So I
and,
missed my chance.
just move it around.
yeah.
Agreed, and in most cases, we've done it a couple times, I would be very open to it. This is by our bylaws an absolute requirement for the first meeting of the year, which we missed, so this has to be, I believe
Well,
has
that's
to be
true,
done.
maybe we can do that one
conducted.
first. 'Cause
I'm trying to move through it quickly.
No, no, I agree, I'm just saying, there's plenty of times we come, it's like, hey, sit through some procedural stuff.
We can always vote to change that.
All right, but you're right, we probably had to elect ourselves and
Yeah.
do some of this stuff.
And typically, we'll talk to staff leading up to this and saying, what's the
Yeah, we usually
issue
do.
that
Gets the most turn.
This
people
is-
are interested in?
This is just a
So,
little unusual tonight.
Yeah, I think these A through D has to be done first, but then
All right.
we're going as fast as we can. We're on C for all those following along. So I just want to change the order of this, or if not, reference our discussion. I didn't look up last year's meeting minutes for this, but I know we talked about this because
We did.
so just to make the order reflective of how we actually do it, and I think really the biggest change is that old and new business moves after the agenda. And then the final thing that I had was again the sort of this history. I thought we had made some amendments, the stuff that I'm talking about now in 2017. So it said it was amended in July of 2016 is the last one I have. And I want to just reflect that we had made these alterations for either, whether you're going to do it in 2017 or 2018, it's irrelevant to me, but I want to reflect that we've made further adjustments, that's all. Especially the history part, I think needs to happen, that's woefully out of date. Any other comments on this rules and procedures document? All right, great. And you wrote on it's on the agenda, including electronic participation. Do we need to make edits to that part of it? I thought we had,
No, you've already adopted that.
we've adopted,
Yeah,
so it's just
that's been
of
adopted.
note that people can, anybody want to make adjustments to the electronic participation?
That's a good
Better
one.
phone.
Yeah, better
State
connections.
code kind of controls what we can do with that.
Have it work.
So as long as we're consistent with that,
I
I
think
think,
we
I think
are.
we are, we talked about that last year.
Okay. This is just discussion item, we don't need any formal motion to adopt this. Okay, great, all right.
But can we get a copy of the rules with the adjustments that are for our next meeting?
Please.
That way we can check them and not have to repeat.
Okay, we have completed our business that we need to do. So, moving on to the item we're all here to discuss, is the public hearing and action on Broad and Washington. This is a comprehensive plan, future land use map amendment, rezoning and special exception, the official zoning map amendment and rezoning and special exceptions, and public hearing and recommendations to city council. So, before we get any presentation from the applicant, I have these speaker slips here, and that is number 7. If you wish to speak on this issue, please, 8, and I see 9 coming.
We get 10.
So the way for those new to this, what we do is when you call you up, you need to state your name and address, and you get 3 minutes to speak. You're welcome to speak on anything you'd like, but if you have something very similar to say to someone else, I hope that you would opt for brevity and attach yourself to those comments. But you are free to speak however you want for 3 minutes. We'll be timing you. This is our procedure, not just on this one, but on any application of this sort. So I'm going to call in the order that we received them, and you're free to say whatever you want. We did receive, I should say, 3 lengthy letters this evening. I have not had a chance to look at them, nor has the rest of the planning commission. For those 3 people who submitted those letters, you may just read your letter if you'd like, or summarize it in some speech. And what we'll do after you've spoken is submit it into the formal record of the meeting, your letter. But I do want you to know that we have not had a chance to take a look at it, so please brief us on what is contained in it. All right. The first speaker slip I have is from Marty Meserve.
Not here.
I don't think.
Not here. I know Marty, and she's not here. Okay. I will hold it until we finish. The next one is Andrew Painter.
Well, good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. My name is Andrew Painter. I'm a zoning attorney by practice with the law firm of Walsh Colucci, but I'm in my capacity this evening as vice chairman of the Chamber's Legislative Committee. We held a meeting with the applicant of the Broad and Washington project on December 14th at our legislative committee. Several members attended, and so the remarks that I have to share with you this evening are on behalf of those members. We have a letter that has been drafted, is currently under review with the committee and then ultimately with our board. But I would say that for those in attendance, we generally support the project. And I imagine that that is what our letter is going to also say as well, because we do believe that the project will generate new net revenue for the city. It will bring what we believe to be a vibrancy and a greater activity to the city's predominant crossroads at Broad and Washington, and we're excited that it will provide a home for Creative Cauldron. We also think from a business perspective that it will provide much needed Class A office space to help attract office users and retain existing and growing and successful businesses in the city. From a parking perspective, we're excited that it will provide shared parking, which is something that the city has been promoting for quite a while, and we would like to see additional parking to help with local commercial property owners. And finally, we believe that it will make new public space available not only on the outskirts of the property and the green spaces, but also in the apartment lobby and a potential new event venue with Creative Cauldron. We do acknowledge, of course, that the city has been somewhat focused on the applicant's commitment to providing an anchor. And particularly retail. This doesn't bring with it, of course, a Harris Teeter or confirm a Fresh Market or anything like that. But I think, as we all know, retail has been in sort of a state of flux over the past 4 or 5 years, and as such, it is extremely doubtful that any retailer would be interested in signing a letter of intent, much less a lease, for a time period so far out. And even though there's not a proposed anchor, we do believe that there is significant Class A office space, and that commitment itself does serve as a sort of an anchor, because the tenants in those buildings are going to patronize local businesses. The same thing is true with Creative Cauldron. That is an organization that encourages patrons to also patronize businesses and restaurants, and we do hope that the city will be flexible regarding retail usage. So for those reasons, our committee seems to be very supportive of the project, but we do have a couple of concerns, which I just wanted to bring to the Commission's attention. They're in no particular order, and feel free to cut me off if I do run over my time. The first is with regards to the median break, the proposed median break on North Washington Street. We understand it is not possible to provide a throughway from the parking garage to the existing public parking that exists behind Argia's and Clarendon's. But we do think that it's critical that that median be removed, or at least cut, to allow turning movements from North Washington Street onto Park Place prior to closing off other access points to the property, over by Applebee's, for example. We have several destination businesses in the area that have significant draws from I-66 and points east in Arlington that rely on those other curb cuts, and without that curb cut going in first, we fear that there are going to be people that go down to the main intersection at Broad and Washington and then make illegal U-turns going around and creating those turning movements. The second issue is this my time? I'm sorry. Okay. Well, I'd be happy to submit additional comments for the record, and I do appreciate your time and consideration on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to Marty Meserve. I saw you walk in. So you can, Marty, you ready to speak?
Thank you. Sorry, I was in the...
No, it's okay.
Good evening, Chairman Wadiska and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Marty Meserve, and I live at 708 Berry Street. Since I first became active in the city in the 1980s, Broad and Washington has been the corner the city has wanted to develop. We finally have a proposal, one that respects the city's desire for Class A office space, and one that takes seriously the arts and entertainment designation of the area. With restaurants and Creative Cauldron, our local award-winning regional theater and arts education center, as the destination attractions in this project, Broad and Washington will draw visitors to the city and create a special place where people want to be. The connections to the State Theater and the other local shops that line Broad and Washington will activate the crossroads in the way the city has envisioned. We have learned from many fronts that the market, not our desires, is the primary driver of development. We have the ability to massage the project to reflect neighbors' concerns, to meet affordable housing goals, and to offset challenges to the schools and recreation programs, among other things. But the market tells us what the big picture will be. The applicant is confident that the market will support the office building and has pledged to provide curated retail that helps activate the project. I also suspect that nothing on a large scale nowadays would be proposed absent a residential component. I believe the additional residential development along Broad Street will contribute to the liveliness already created by previous projects and generate more pedestrian traffic. I think we are finally on our way to having a downtown. As a recent article in The Atlantic pointed out, the country has been experiencing a retail meltdown in the last 2 years. Although the GDP has been growing, unemployment is down, and gas prices have stabilized, the retail sector is crashing. The reasons given are: 1, people are shopping online in record numbers; 2, there is a surplus of brick and mortar stores; and 3, spending patterns have shifted to reflect people's search for experiences rather than material things. People are seeking out activities that translate well into a Facebook or Instagram post. Restaurants, local businesses, and entertainment venues such as Creative Cauldron are the magnets that now draw people to developments. Broad and Washington is poised to take advantage of the opportunities the market is presenting. In doing so, it promises to create a vibrant gathering place that will invite people from the region to visit the city. Given the recent revisions to the plan and the responsiveness of the applicant to the concerns of the neighborhood and city council, I encourage you to support this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Tom Dugan? Duggan? My apologies.
That's right, thanks. Tom Duggan, live at 102 Lawton Street. 102 Lawton Street is right across from the proposed Broad and Washington project. I'm not here as a concerned neighbor today, but more as a concerned citizen. The proposed development has made some significant improvement to the design for the area that is close to our house, and we appreciate that. Although we still believe the 35-foot height should be extended all the way down Lawton Street to assure the compatibility with the neighborhood. My major concern at this point is the lack of an anchor, and for that matter, any contracts or commitments for the vast amount of space on the lower level. This is creating a major risk for the city. I think it's time for the City of Falls Church to face reality here, and hopefully the Planning Commission will say what needs to be said. We cannot risk the citizens of Falls Church finances by agreeing to this project until we have a legitimate anchor and we have commitments and contracts for the restaurant space that is being included in the financials of this project. The developer either provides commitment contracts or they guarantee that they will pay the funds out of their pocket for whatever financials are used in the calculations. To me, this is basic business. I think it's unbelievable that we are using proposed financials based on the developer allocating restaurant space and saying that they have a lot of experience and feel really good about leasing the property. We all know that things can change very quickly, and if they simply do not lease the space, then the City of Falls Church is going to pay for it. We all know that the developer has the best intentions of leasing space. But we all know that stuff happens, and things don't always go according to plan. The Harris Teeter building had an anchor, the Tinner Hill project had an anchor. Fresh Market did not move in, but they were responsible for the funds, which helped the city out immensely till Target moved in. The developer has indicated that it's too early to get commitments, but how come other developers are able to get an anchor and commitments? Most of these companies plan out years ahead of time. Also, we are currently in a very high-level economy with an excellent business environment. This should be an excellent time to get candidates for this premier spot in the city. Is this a red flag that this development will have difficult time in getting potential candidates for this project? It could be. City of Falls Church has excellent bargaining power in this negotiation. We are talking about the premier piece of property in the city, and we are talking about rezoning a T1 transitional lot. The rezoning is only supposed to be agreed to for an exemplary reason. This project cannot be exemplary unless we have a legitimate high-end anchor and retail commitments. Almost done there. Let's not look back in 3 years and say we could have done this, we should have done that. Now is the time to provide the proper guidance to the city council. I believe the planning commission should stand up for the city and make a strong recommendation in no uncertain terms to the city council that they need to have a legitimate anchor and contract for the restaurant space that is used in the calculations before we move on with this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Your time's still up.
It sounds like my school's
No,
alarm.
I haven't learned how to use my new phone yet. I apologize.
Subtle. Next one is Ed Galek? Galek. I'm trying my best here. Please correct me for the record.
Yeah, my name's Ed Galek. My wife and I own 201 East Broad Street, right at the corner of Lawton and Broad. When we purchased this house in 1978, we were very much aware of the residence was only a block or two away from commercial use. Since the lot across the street from us on Lawton was zoned T1, we were assured that the building height would never exceed 45 feet. The existing medical building actually met these requirements. We could never have imagined our wildest dream that the City of Falls Church would ever consider the initial proposal of a 7-story building on that lot. We take issue with a number of findings in the attachment 1H, Broad and Washington Special Exception narrative statement in the agenda today, which I'll refer to as narrative statement. According to the narrative statement at page 4, the high-quality architectural design furthers the city design guidelines by creating appropriately scaled buildings with interesting and unique facades on all 4 sides of the building. This is clearly not the case on the side of the building referred to as Lower Lawton Street. That is, we own the house on the corner of Lawton and Broad, right across the street, right on that edge. Raising the height of a portion of the building at the midpoint of Lawton to the continued 65-foot height along Lower Lawton does not create an appropriately scaled building. As is readily apparent to the Lawton neighbors or to anyone who seriously considers the proposed architectural design, the extreme mass and density of the Lawton side of the proposed building is in stark contrast to the conformity of all the residences on Lawton and the section of Broad heading east towards Seven Corners. The visual incompatibility with the proposed project is undeniable. The narrative statement also incorrectly suggests at page 5 that there are no remaining issues with the building height on Lawton. In the July 10th, 2017 City Council meeting, the council made a strong statement that the height of the new building be set at 35 feet, or at least that inside get a yes with the neighbors. To date, neither of these conditions or guidelines have been met. As far back as March 3rd, 2016, 32 neighbors on Lawton Street, East Columbia Street, North Oak, Cherry Street, Shadow Walk, Rosemary Lane, in addition to Claire and Don's Restaurant, opposed the proposed height of the building along Lawton. These 32 neighbors each signed the corresponding email sent by Mary Chavez on their behalf to the City Council. For almost 2 years, the neighbors on Lawton and nearby streets have continued to oppose the height of the building along Lawton. Last summer, we sent an email to Maurice Stern stating we strongly support the 35-foot building height along Lawton. Just over 2 months ago, 12 Lawton neighbors opposed the continued 65-foot height along Lower Lawton. Insight is not close to getting a yes from the neighbors regarding the proposed height of the building on Lawton. Yet, contrary to the City Council's guidelines, Insight continues to propose a building height greater than 35 feet. City Council also requested 17 improvements to the project, yet only a few have been met or addressed. City staff continue to recommend 49 changes in the staff report, we encourage the Planning Commission to make Insight address these concerns. We believe that considerably more work remains to be done. The proper comparison for measuring improvement to the project design is to compare the current proposal to the height requirements of the special exception and the City Council's 2017 guidelines. For example, a reduction in the original 7-story design by 1 level is not a significant improvement when compared to the special exception height requirements, which limit the building height to 35 feet. We urge the Planning Commission to employ such a comparison in deciding whether to approve Insight's proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mary Chavez, the aforementioned.
Mary Chavez, 215 Lawton Street. And we have a number of people here. Not everyone is going to speak, so we're working toward brevity.
You guys have been very respectful of the time, I appreciate it.
The Planning Commission is being asked to approve a number of zoning, land use, height, and residential use changes for the Broad and Washington project. Of immediate concern is the failure of the proposed project to comply with the current comprehensive plan and land use map, and its inconsistency with redevelopment as envisioned in the Downtown Falls Church small area plan. The current T1 transitional lot has served historically as an essential buffer to the neighboring R1A residential community, including the historic Lawton House. The Downtown Falls Church small area plan would have continued this zoning and did not project mixed residential use for either this lot or the 2 B2 high-density commercial lots on the corner. Hence, the proposed project presents a significant change in the city's vision. In our view, the project can only be deemed acceptable if, 1, the project itself is exemplary in its attractive design and the financial revenue it would provide for the city. 2, the residential component is moderated. 3, a reasonable transition and buffer to the neighboring community is maintained. And 4, the beneficial impacts for the community clearly outweigh any potential negative repercussions for school crowding, traffic, and environmental degradation. None of these objectives have been properly met. The undifferentiated mass and density of the residential component presents an unattractive face on both the northern and southern boundaries, with excessive use of fiber cement panels rather than brick and masonry. Net financial revenues for the city would be well below the potential for this key corner and rest primarily on the assumption of projected income from the proposed restaurants, with no significant commitments in hand. The 295 apartments pose the potential for progressive student growth over time in a city whose schools are already seriously crowded. Moreover, there are significant discrepancies in the apartment square footage numbers that imply substantial space for more students. Some 80 trees will be uprooted, with minimal true green space to offset the environmental loss. Traffic entering and exiting the 2.7-acre building will pose difficult queuing problems at a heavily traveled intersection, while parking fees will encourage parking on neighborhood streets. Finally, although the developer has made welcome changes to height in the northeast corner, it fails to step down adequately to the neighborhood and presents too much sudden differential in height as an entrance to the city. Height and depth of the step back proposed by the northeast corner should be continued all the way to Broad Street to be compatible with the neighboring residential district. A similar reduction was agreed upon for Mason Row as it faces the residences across Park and was clearly a condition for development along Washington Boulevard in the East Falls Church small area plan. We request the commission to seriously consider these issues and to defer action on the change in land use, rezoning, and special exception approval until substantial further improvements have been made by the developer. I thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Rebecca. I just can't get out the last.
TAX.
TAX. It looked like I was. Got it.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Tax. I live at 303 North Oak Street in Falls Church. I would like to just continue a little bit on what Andrew Painter was saying on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, and that I think that it is of tantamount importance to get this curb cut completed before any construction begins. If that does not occur, it will be devastating to Clarendon's, Argia's, the State Theater, and also would have a gigantic impact on the Lawton Street neighbors as people who are coming to our restaurants and other businesses from 66 and from Arlington will certainly have to go past, take a left, have no other option, and then end up going on Lawton Street, which is not going to help them want this project any more than they already do. So I just would like, for the sake of brevity, to just finish there and say that it has to happen before the fence goes around the building and the access points are cut off. Thank you.
Thank you. Janet?
Scores.
Gores. I appreciate you correcting me. I feel like I got the next one and not the next one.
You need to be a school teacher to be able to read anything.
Not my strength.
Okay, I will try and not read this whole thing. It's not terribly long, but my principal objection is that this thing is too big. You know, I can't imagine 2.7 acres. I mean, I looked out at my backyard, which is almost a half an acre, and then I imagine 2.7. I just think that's a huge block of cement. And, you know, particularly if you're coming in from the south, you're going down a tree-lined street with lovely old homes, and all of a sudden you hit a block of cement. So I think it's out of scale with the buildings near it and with the residential neighborhood behind it. I'm concerned about traffic. I don't know about you guys, but I end up waiting through 2 or 3 lights at some intersections at rush hour, and that's kind of a shock. I'm one of the old timers that remembers never having to do that. This is the busiest intersection in Falls Church, I believe. I haven't really done research on it, but you know, it's got 2 major roads, and we're gonna add a whole bunch of parking and a whole bunch of cars. I guess the thing I care about the most is having some green space. Howard Herman Park is in back of me. I love it. I feel so fortunate that it's been put in the neighborhood. I think any place you have really high density development like that, if you want really nice quality of life, you have a place for people to walk their dogs, take their kids out and just stroll and enjoy a leafy environment. And we are getting rid of 80 trees and replacing them, I believe, with some kind of a patio that's 2 floors up, which I presume is not going to be dirt and grass and flowers and stuff. I don't know. And this city is an increasingly built environment, and I'm one of the people that find that distressing. I don't like to drive down a canyon and wait many minutes at a light and things like that. I want it to be pretty. And I think, you know, that works for Old Town Alexandria. They're very persnickety about what people put there. Okay, so I think we should just hold out, see if we can get more of what we want, more of the requested amenities.
Did we get your address?
I'm sorry. Yeah, 121 South Lee Street.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. We're coming down to 2 more left. If you want to speak after hearing everybody, now's the time to fill them out. Eric Schultz.
Good evening. We live at 107 Lawton. I guess I'm a longtime follower, first-time speaker. My wife's been representing my interests for the last 6 months here. We spent the last 3 years overseas working for the State Department. We bought the house right before we went overseas, and we bought it for many of the same reasons that other people in the neighborhood did. It's an attractive community. It's the little city. And when we look at this project, first, we're not opposed to the idea of something being built there. We, in fact, have tried to work very closely with the developers to look for creative ways to move the project forward. But a lot of the concerns of the neighborhood still haven't really been addressed. And the principal one is the height of the buildings, the mass of the buildings, the fact that there really isn't an adequate transition from those buildings as currently proposed to the houses around it. And our house is one of the ones that will be most affected, frankly, by this. The second thing, frankly, I think several people have alluded to it, is the parking. What we really like about Falls Church and about where we live is the walkability of the neighborhood. And it's kind of hard to see how that's going to get better when you suddenly add a lot of automobiles, as one of I think the last speaker just said. When you add a lot of automobiles to what's already an extremely busy intersection. And our immediate problem, of course, is as the lady from Clarendon said, what are people going to do? I mean, we already have a lot of people cutting through Lawton in the morning trying to beat the traffic. So now we're going to have that in the evening as well, and people looking for parking on the street. So that needs to be thought about. What are you going to do to try to reduce traffic density and improve the walkability of the area? It's one thing to say that you're going to urbanize, but if you're going to urbanize, you also have to make it green and you have to make it walkable. And I think the comparison to Old Town Alexandria is a very apt one. That's probably what you should be looking for. So. And beyond that, I'll just say that I associate myself with a lot of what my neighbors have said. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Last but not least, Dave Aggie.
Good evening, Dave Haggy, 306 Shadow Walk. I've been a resident of the city since '95. I'm not going to read a long list. I'm just going to make a statement and ask a question. The statement is, and I've had this conversation a lot over the years, what are the things that make the city of Falls Church so nice to live in? Schools usually, and I'm in residential real estate, and I hear that all the time, is number one, and I don't think it's number one. I've got one kid that graduated, 2 in the high school right now. They're fabulous schools. We're not going to argue that. How about proximity? It's great to be next to 66 and 2 metros, but that's not number one to me. Number one to me is community. So when something bad happens to a street that I don't live on, like Lawton Street, it still affects me. It affects me fiscally. If our taxes are negatively impacted by more kids than was expected to show up, like Pearson Square. Traffic, I try my best, and I almost never cut through Lawton just because if I lived there, I wouldn't want people cutting through. So I deal with the traffic as best I can. But it's a sense of community. So if something good happens on Lawton Street, it's good for me. If something bad happens on Lawton Street, it's bad for me too. We have to think of this not just, that's on the east side of town, I live over by the West End Giant, I don't care. That's the wrong attitude. So that's my statement. And my question is, clearly this project is going to be approved at some point soon in some format. And I'm in real estate. I'm a big believer in property rights. But the question I have for everybody on the commission is, in 5-10 years, whenever it is that somebody asks you after the project is completely done and people have gotten used to it, if somebody was to come up to you and ask you, were you proud that you voted in favor of the project that we now see? Do you want to be able to say yes? Or are you going to hopefully change the subject and hope the person never comes up to you and asks you, were you on the planning commission at the time? How are you going to answer that question based on the decision you're going to make sometime soon? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's concludes the speaker slips I have. I'm going to ask one more time. Anybody else want to speak? If not, then we're going to close this to public comment. Thank you all for your comments. We will be having a discussion about this, hearing from the applicant, and I'm certain the people on this commission will be addressing some of your comments, and perhaps to your satisfaction, perhaps not. Okay, so in terms of the public hearing, are we going to hear a presentation from the applicant? It looks like it. I think for myself, if you could please highlight the changes that have occurred since our last work session in December, that would be helpful to me. But otherwise, you have the floor. And
Mr. Chair, staff does have a very brief presentation.
Okay,
before
yeah,
is that
I'm sorry.
okay?
I've jumped the gun there.
No worries.
We have
I'll be very quick.
We've heard about this numerous times, so that's totally my fault.
Just, all right, so this project is before you tonight for final action, and at this time, staff is requesting your mandatory recommendation to the City Council. Before I go to staff's recommendation or recommended motion, I would like to briefly just highlight some aspects of the staff report, then turn it over to the applicant for their presentation. The City Council granted first reading and referred a proposed Broad and Washington mixed-use project to boards and commissions on November 13th. The council public meeting for second reading and final consideration is scheduled for April 9th. The proposed Broad and Washington development, and I've talked about this before, but I'll just quickly highlight it. Mixed-use building includes up to 6 stories of residential multi-family rental apartments with 295 units. That's above ground level retail, a 6-story office building above ground floor retail at the corner of Broad and Washington. Ground floor retail on the frontage of the project on East Broad and North Washington Streets, including a community theater space. 1-story above ground parking in addition to 2 underground levels. The building heights proposed varies from 65 feet to 90 feet along East Broad Street, 12 feet to 65 feet along Lawton Street, 72 feet to 90 feet along North Washington Street, an average height of 75 feet along the north elevation. The development application entails a comprehensive plan map amendment to change the entire site from business and transitional to mixed-use designation, rezoning of one parcel at 131 East Broad from transitional to B2 zoning, and special exceptions for residential development within the mixed-use development, and a height bonus of up to 15 feet that takes the by right 75 feet height to 90 feet proposed. The city staff has reviewed the latest submission, and this is their 5th submission, and staff comments are provided in attachment 7 of the staff report. At this time, we have only received comments from EDA, Human Services Advisory Council, CACT, and AAB. Those comments were provided to you for your information. The rest of the boards and commission comments will most likely be received in the next couple of weeks. In addition to previous comments raised by the City Council, several areas have been identified by staff to guide the applicant in further development and refinement of the proposed project. Those key staff issues include improved architecture and material selection on north elevation, commitment for additional stormwater management, further development of TDM with city staff, additional crosswalks around the site for pedestrian safety, median break on North Washington to improve vehicular access to city lot, and additional intersection enhancements at Broad and Washington. Those are just to name a few. In terms of next steps, the applicant has now received comments from city staff, council, and planning commission, among other boards and commissions, as well as members of the public. The applicant's team is now working on addressing all those comments, and with further guidance from the planning commission tonight, they will resubmit their revised plans soon after the boards and commission review period concludes. Finally, with the understanding that the project needs additional work between now and second reading on April 9th, staff recommends that Planning Commission provide a recommendation of approval to the City Council tonight. And with that, I will turn it over to the applicant for their presentation.
Thank you for that staff report. We have a great many documents from you guys on this project.
All right, good evening. I'm Scott Adams. I'm a land use attorney with McGuire Woods, and we appreciate you having us back this evening. We were here in December, as you may recall, to run through at a work session the project and those various documents that were provided to you. And we've now been through the full circuit of boards and commissions, which we did in December, and back here tonight for a recommendation from this board. And so we're excited with where the project is. I think we wanted to take an opportunity tonight to run through just a quick refresher on the project and then go through some of the project details and some of the things that have changed as we've gone through the boards and commissions process, and in particular responding to some of the comments that we heard in December from this group. So just to reorient you with the project at Broad and Washington, really an important project, we think, for the city, anchoring the most important intersection in the city, in our opinion, with a mix of uses that we think really work well together to create a very good project for the city and for the community. We have a major Class A office commitment of 66,700 square feet. We've got a significant retail program on the ground floor with detailed retail commitments in the voluntary concessions. We have Creative Cauldron providing them with a permanent home in a very prominent location within the city. And then residential units, and as you may recall from December, we've eliminated the 3-bedroom units from the original mix that was proposed. Providing Creative Cauldron with a long-term home, we think is a real cornerstone of this project, and it really helps to solidify this as an arts and entertainment district compatible with the other arts venues that are there, primarily the State Theater, and then also the restaurant options, RG's, Clarendon's, really we think providing complementary uses for those arts venues. And then public spaces, we'll get into some of the details on that. I know there's some questions about that at the last meeting, but we really feel that we're providing a significant amount of public open space, but also private open space for the residents. And from a fiscal impact standpoint, really a very positive fiscal story for the city. So the Class A office, just remind you, 66,700 square feet, true Class A space, really we think unlike anything that exists in the city, and really anchoring that very prominent intersection. We feel that this is a cornerstone of the project and sort of the anchor of the project. I know there's been some discussion about, why haven't you come forward with a Target or Harris Teeter? I think as we get into the retail program, we'll talk about this is a different project than some of the projects that have come through the city recently from that perspective, in terms of where we think the anchor really is. For us, the Class A office and the Creative Cauldron space are really the anchors for this project. The retail plan, we have ground floor space for 26,300 square feet. That includes a significant amount of restaurant space and also 6,000 square feet for specialty grocer. We envision that as something similar to the local market that exists in the City of Falls Church, or something like the Italian store that currently has a couple locations in Arlington. Really that sort of scale and size of space that we're looking at, and then complementing that with a significant amount of restaurant space, ranging from full-service restaurants down to quick service, really providing what we think are great complementary uses for the existing arts venues that are there. Because of the way that I think we envision this project, we don't have that large anchor, that Target or that Harris Teeter that's looking 3 years out, 5 years out to sign a lease. We're looking a lot more local in terms of who the tenants are that we're trying to target. And particularly for restaurants, they don't think 3 years out in terms of signing leases. The types of restaurants we're looking at are thinking 6 months out, a year out, in terms of when they're looking to sign leases for space. And that's why we don't have leases in hand. It's not because we don't think the project is viable. It's not because it's not a great location, because it is a great location. It's a function of the market and the fact that these types of users, which we think are the types of users that the City of Falls Church should want to bring in, local users, local restaurateurs, it takes a little bit more time to get those users in. Just quickly, we heard some comments on just the ground floor use and sort of the uniformity of that, and wanted to just run through quickly how we've tried to differentiate the retail facades on the ground floor. This is a shot looking up North Washington Street, and you can see the outdoor seating that's on North Washington Street that's under that covered arcade, and then North Washington Street running up, and then East Broad. Really with the prominent corner, we envision that as a full-service sit-down restaurant to really anchor that corner and create some vibrancy, particularly with the outdoor seating. You can see it in this view that outdoor seating is really shielded from the traffic on North Washington. It's set back from East Broad. We really think it's going to be a fantastic outdoor space that's going to add to the vibrancy of the community and the walkability. Moving down East Broad Street, this is a shot of the access to the public park space, and then also the pedestrian connection through the site to the city parking lot. Starts to show the width of the streetscape running throughout the project. We meet the city's streetscape standards, 20 feet from the back of curb to the edge of the building, and 10-foot clear for the sidewalks, and that's something that we're committed to on East Broad Street and North Washington Street along the entire frontage. Just moving down, you can start to see some of the articulation variation in the ground floor retail space. The use of awnings, changing up both the articulation of the building and the design of those retail spaces to create some variation as you're moving down the street. And then at the corner with Creative Cauldron, and you can start to see the articulation in this shot a little bit more in terms of how the building really is not a monolith as you go down East Broad Street. I think we have obviously heard the comments, particularly from the Architectural Advisory Board, about a particular section of the building on East Broad Street, and we've heard that from staff as well, and that's a section of the project that we're looking at from an architectural standpoint to really make sure that we're adding some additional variation, articulation into the building. You can also see in this shot how it starts to step down as you get towards Lawton Street. The 65 feet is the corner in the light brown color, and then there's actually a further step down to about 25 feet where the Creative Cauldron space on the ground floor comes out towards the corner at Lawton.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Put that picture back up. So you're saying that there's oh, okay. That Creative Cauldron space comes out with almost a terrace on the top of that?
It does. So you come from 65 feet and then it comes out. And there's not actually access to that
Right,
that
but
rooftop space,
there.
but it comes out at the
And then
podium
does that
level.
go all the way back?
That does. It goes back
The 25
to
feet?
25 feet goes back to about right here.
And then what does it do?
And then, well, we can.
Then it goes to
Yeah.
35?
So then the building steps back further from Lawton. In that
You'll
small
get to it,
section,
okay.
yeah, we'll get to it, but it goes up to the sort of 5-story height there, but then comes down as you get back
Was that
on
there
Lawton.
before?
It was. It
Was?
was there. I just don't think it was particularly
Pointed
called out
'cause,
well.
Visually, you can't see it
Yep.
there.
What's the
Unless
width
you
of
really
that
think
section?
about it.
How wide is that?
You're talking about how long it is?
Just that little 25-foot piece
It probably runs along.
between the building and I guess.
Between the setback, so from the
Yeah.
edge to
Around
here.
8-9 feet.
Okay.
It's not a huge sort of step down, but we think it helps with the scale
Right.
at that corner and
But that
bringing
was
the
never
building
pointed
back.
out before.
We may have not done a good job of pointing it out before,
I'm a good listener.
particularly if you don't understand it. And I know we've seen each other frequently over the past month,
And
and
I've heard
that's
this.
probably on us.
I've heard this over 4 or 5 times.
Yes. Quickly, Creative Cauldron space. Not much has changed here. Again, it's providing that permanent home for Creative Cauldron and structuring the lease in a way that is going to make Creative Cauldron successful in this location. That includes making sure that the actual rental amount is low enough that it's affordable for them, but also including things like common area maintenance, real estate taxes, so there's some certainty in terms of the monthly expenses that Creative Cauldron is going to have, and then also making sure that we're actually paying for the build-out of that space. When we've calculated it out, the sort of contribution amount for Creative Cauldron in terms of the rent, some of the common area maintenance expenses, the real estate, the build-out, it's a seven-figure contribution in terms of making sure that Creative Cauldron has a space in this project. We think it's a great asset for the community. It's a great asset in this location. It's something that we think is great for the project as well. But it is a commitment and a fairly significant financial commitment that's being made to make sure that Creative Cauldron has a space here. In terms of the open space, I think we went over this fairly quickly at the last meeting, so we wanted to provide some additional details. This is just the overall sort of rooftop plan showing both the public and the private open space. We've got a little over 35,000 square feet of open space on the site. That works out to about 30% of the site as usable open space. A little over half of that is public open space in two main locations. 9,000 square feet in the second-story plaza that's accessed from East Broad Street, and then 9,250 square feet in the Pocket Park adjacent to Lawton Street. In addition to that, we've got two private courtyards interior to the building. Those will have amenities for the residents of the project, including a pool and then some passive recreation amenities. And then also a big focus for Insight is pet amenities, making sure that we've got facilities for people who want to walk their dogs or have space for their dogs to run, making sure that we're providing that space for the residents. So the second floor plaza, I know there's been a lot of discussion. This was one of the issues that has come up frequently as we've gone through the boards and commissions process. Just as a reminder, it's a 9,000 square foot space. We've provided access to the space from East Broad. We've got a public stairwell. We also have a public elevator. So if you walk in off East Broad, the public elevator is right there, so it's fully accessible. And then also, one of the big comments we heard was providing a secondary access, provide a connection to the RGA's Clarendons and city parking lot. And so we're committed to doing that. We're coming up with some architectural designs for that, but in our next submission, we'll have that secondary access point on that side to provide better connection to the
What's
city
the grade
lot.
like there? I mean, are you talking about another set of steps probably?
Yeah, it's going to be steps
Yeah.
down. It's about, 10 to 12 feet on the back there. So it's
Okay.
not a huge step down. It's actually, probably less steps than on the front on East Broad.
Okay.
So we're committed to designing that as a very friendly, inviting stairwell. This is it will function as a public park. It'll be open to the public during normal hours of operation that parks generally would. We envision it really as a combination of passive, active recreation opportunities. An opportunity for somebody to come up and eat lunch if they buy food at one of the restaurants, to come up on a Saturday morning, have a cup of coffee, read the newspaper, but also providing some flexibility so that you've got some programming opportunities on this space. We think it's a great opportunity with Creative Cauldron being in the space to provide some outdoor theater, outdoor concerts, outdoor movies, participating in watch night activities. We really envision this as a real centerpiece and an asset to the broader Falls Church community.
And what's the landscaping up there? It's
Yeah,
smaller
so
trees and grass?
it's conceptual. It's going to be a combination of hardscape and landscape. I think we're still refining the actual design of it and trying to match it with sort of the programmatic aspects that we're committed to. Making sure that it's flexible enough that you've got the seating for people who want to come up and use it passively during the day or on weekends, but also having the flexibility so that you can have those larger events up there. And so we're still working on sort of refining the design. That space will also have a portion of it will have a green roof. So that'll be accommodated within the final design of that space. It's just a view from the back, just to answer your question in terms of the height differential, about 10 to 12 feet. I think we've shown it here as a sort of set up for a public movie screening. I guess ignore the unlicensed Star Wars in the movie screen. But really, we, again, envision this as a great public space, and I think connecting it to the city parking lot, having a better connection to Clarendon's RGs is really going to be a great asset. Quickly on the Pocket Park, the design of this hasn't changed much since the last time we were here. It's really designed as a more passive space. Lots of seating opportunities, a mixture of hardscape, landscape, and also a pedestrian connection between Lawton and the city parking lot, RG's, Clarendon's. Again, trying to improve walkability within the broader area, but also providing some respite for the community as well. And that's, again, a public park space, so that'll be owned and maintained by the developer, but open to the public during normal park hours. I don't know that we showed this the last time. You may recall at the top of the office building at the corner of Broad and Washington, there's an outdoor terrace. And we just wanted to call out sort of conceptual design that we've got for that. That'll be a private space that'll be either associated with the office users, or we've also looked at potentially putting a restaurant on the top floor of the office building and having that be used for outdoor seating. But really, it's elevated. We think it's going to be a great space, and even though it's sort of above the street, we think it still helps to add to some of the activation livelihood of the area. Just very quickly, we talked about the connection from Lawton to the city parking lot. This is just a view of the other access way through from East Broad to the city parking lot and the RG's parking lot. So public stairs, and then the access way that goes through the project, striped out, and then comes up to a stairwell that leads to an opening doorways to the city parking lot. Just trying to provide, again, some permeability for pedestrians to move through the site. From an environmental standpoint, we still have a LEED Silver commitment. I think we've heard as we've gone through the boards and commissions process that there's a strong desire to go to LEED Gold. It's something that we've taken to heart. We're really trying to find a way to get to LEED Gold. I think we would love to do it. With the new LEED system that's been put in place, we've found some difficulty with this project in trying to come up with a firm way to get to LEED Gold. But it's something that we're still committed to. We've committed to providing a draft scorecard to the environmental environmental sustainability committee. Thank you. Just sort of, I think, furthering that discussion, and we're looking forward to continuing that discussion with city staff as well in terms of
Where is the difficulty? Like, where would you not be able to meet it with this project?
I'd say it's not so much that we don't think we can meet it. This is a very conceptual design at this phase, and there are a lot of points that are related to energy savings, water savings, and it's very difficult at this point to say, even projects that are much farther along in design, to say we absolutely will get 20 energy savings points and 10 water savings points. Based on our past history and projects we've worked on that MBNA's worked on, we think it's achievable. We wouldn't feel comfortable putting forward a scorecard that said we absolutely would hit those points, because we don't feel comfortable yet that we can absolutely hit a certain number of points.
Well, could you not in the, just say, like, what you have in the conditions right now is that you're going to go for LEED Silver? Could we not just update the conditions so that you will attempt LEED Gold at least?
Yeah, that's something we've talked about, and we would be
at
comfortable
least
saying
if that was
yeah.
in there written, I feel like you guys were trying.
Yeah,
and that's one of the things that we've talked about internally, is actually setting the LEED Gold goal. But if we get to the final design and we fall a few points short of that, understanding that sort of we're still in conformance with the voluntary concessions. I think what we're trying to avoid is setting a commitment that we're not sure we can actually hit.
And I recognize that,
Yeah.
but I think that then you should update the conditions to suggest that you're going to attempt to get to LEED Gold once you're closer to your design area, and that Yeah, I just think that makes a lot more sense.
Yep.
One thing too, while I'm looking at it,
Yes.
you guys are committing to 5 charging stations. Does that seem like, is that the right per capita number for that number of residents?
It's actually probably high.
Is it high still?
Yeah.
Because it
So
just seemed like I know more and more people with electric cars.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's the direction that things are going, is probably more electric. So I think having the 5 charging stations, which is 10 spaces, it's probably good for where we're headed. And I think
Okay.
we've got a commitment in there as well that we're installing conduit. So if future stations are needed, it's a matter of simply putting the station in, and you're not having to rewire the garage.
Right, okay, that's great.
Excuse me, one other thing.
Yes.
I think I remember you saying that your other projects were all gold or higher, right?
Yes.
The 2 most recent projects we built, one is gold certified, the other we opened it a year ago, and we're just now going through the
Okay,
process.
right.
That we think will be legal, but just to further my point from before, that's
Right,
a year
right.
after it opened, and we're still going through the
But I
USGBC
think
process, but
that's
it
good to
should be
know.
legal.
Yeah.
Well,
But
like
this
I
is
said,
a
I just
different
like a written
process, different
commitment
higher
that we're
level.
trying for gold.
Yeah, and I think it shows that there's a commitment that Insight has on their projects, that they actually do care about hitting higher lead goals. I think it's the fact that we're not able to commit is not a reflection of not caring about it. It's there's a new system, and we're just
and
can't
to
get
me-
there right now. But your point is
Right.
well taken, and I think we're comfortable.
Change the verbiage.
Yeah, trying to come up with that
I don't think it's
goal.
just the commitment to the environment. I think it's also a commitment
Yep.
to being a Class A office building.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, at least I know from my company's building a new headquarters, that is more important to us than from a we're building a Class A building, we expect it to be gold or platinum. So,
Yeah, absolutely. So quickly on other environmental commitments, I think we went over most of these already. The stormwater management, that's a comment that we received from staff. There's some downstream flooding that we think may be attributable to sort of this area of Falls Church. So we've been working with the city staff on increasing the stormwater management commitments on this project. I think we've figured out sort of what the target is that we're hitting now, that staff has agreed to, and it's just a matter of in the revised plans just showing that. So I think we feel pretty good about the improved stormwater management that's being proposed. We have a TDM plan. We've got a draft that is getting ready to go into staff. We've been working with staff and coordinating sort of what needs to be in the TDM program. I think we're generally in agreement on what needs to be in there. And so,
Can I just,
yes.
I think it's something that a lot of people don't realize, that the stormwater management done on the new developments help out the rest of the city.
Yes.
Help out other areas of the city. And I think that's something that people rarely think of, and the fact that most of the city, as it originally was, has no stormwater management whatsoever. And so that each and every development does help out certain areas of the city with that stormwater problem and with the flooding.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And, for this project, I mean, the downstream flooding we're talking about is like on
It's
Hillwood
extensive
Avenue.
stormwater management.
So it's not really even in sort of immediate proximity to the project, but
Right.
the stormwater controls that we're putting in that don't exist now, absolutely have a broader impact on the overall quality in the city. All right. Transportation commitments. I think we talked about most of these. The public parking in the garage, that'll be going to be open for paid public parking. We've got it set pretty broadly in our voluntary concessions now. I know that we've received comments about trying to nail down some of the hours of operation. The way the VCs are drafted right now, we've left it somewhat open, but tying it to make sure that the hours of operation coincide with not only the activities on our site, but what's going on around us, so that if somebody pays to park in this garage to go to a show at the State Theater, that they don't come out of the show and the garage is closed.
well, and I think, you have one sentence in here that says, at a minimum, the parking management plan shall include a minimum hours of operation. That just doesn't really make any sense. So perhaps you could say at a minimum, it will include a certain number of operations or something. Because a minimum of a minimum is nothing right now.
We can rephrase the way
kinda
those
like a
voluntary
null
concessions
number,
are
right?
drafted.
Yeah, when I read that, I was
Yep.
just kind of like, what's the minimum of a minimum?
The intent of that was we're obviously going to set minimum hours of operation.
Well, and you can automate
for the
this pretty
project.
much. I mean, I work in Old Town,
Yes.
and most of those garages are automated.
Yep.
You rarely see a person unless something breaks.
Yep.
So there shouldn't be a problem with having the hours be a certain number on the weekend especially.
Yeah, and I don't think we have an issue with that, and I think the issue for us is just we probably, because there's residential office aspects to the project, that we may not want somebody coming in at 3:00 in the morning and sort of going
Well, I
around
get
the
that.
parking garage. I mean, that's what we're trying to protect against, not keeping someone who's parked at the State Theater from exiting the garage.
Yeah, I can understand
Yeah.
that limiting the entrance, but the exit should be pretty easy to have as late as possible.
Yep. Yeah.
But you may have residents who work different shifts.
Yes. Well, I think for residents,
They'll have
they'll
their
always
own-
have access to
yeah.
the garage. The couple of other things just to talk about quickly, crosswalks. There's been a request from staff for some additional mid-block crosswalks. We had shown initially one mid-block crosswalk on East Broad Street. There's been a request for an additional one sort of at the intersection of Lawton, and then a third at North Washington Street. I think as we've gone through the process and gotten feedback from the boards and commissions, I think we're concerned a little bit about some of the unsignalized crosswalks, particularly on East Broad and frankly on North Washington as well. Just from a safety perspective, I think that's reflected in some of the comments that you saw from CACT and also from the Human Services Board, that there's some concern about the safety of some of those mid-block crossings that are being proposed. I think we've also got concerns in just terms of actually meeting VDOT standards for unsignalized crosswalks. They have criteria for when a unsignalized crosswalk can be approved, and we're just not convinced that this project, outside of even the safety concerns, actually can meet those standards. So that's something that we're probably going to have to continue having discussions with city staff on in terms of whether those crosswalks really, I think, make sense from both a safety standpoint and a functionality standpoint. In terms of drop-off, we heard some comments about sort of where the drop-off occurs for with the Creative Cauldron and the residential. And if you want to go to the next one. So we've looked at a couple of options. The one on the right is actually the current configuration. There's a drop-off internal to the garage. The way the garage works is there's a grace period when you come in. So we envision that drop-off is actually going to be pretty frequently used, is fairly accessible in terms of how the parking is structured. So it's sort of easy in, easy out for people to be dropped off there. But we're also proposing a new drop-off location on East Broad Street. It's sort of in between the Creative Cauldron space and the residential entrance, sort of short-term parking. So if you're being picked up, dropped off by an Uber, if you've got a food delivery who's sort of running in.
It's not going to happen, I'm sorry. No Uber driver is going to be looking for a space inside the parking.
That's why we're putting one on the outside, I
Yes.
think.
So I think, and what we're talking about right now is actually on East Broad Street, which would be space for sort of pulling off and dropping up, picking up and dropping off, so that it's right in front of the residential entrance. For the medium break, we heard that comment loud and clear, I think, at every board and commission meeting that we went to. We've looked at it from a transportation standpoint, traffic standpoint, from an engineering standpoint. We absolutely think we can accomplish the medium break, and in our next submission, we'll be coming forward with the proposed medium break, and I think we're fully comfortable with the timing that's been proposed, that we've heard from Claire and Dodds, in terms of making sure that medium break is in place before the other access points to the city parking lot go away.
Is that something that VDOT has to approve?
There will be a city approval process and a VDOT approval process. We've started looking at that process, making sure we've got a firm grasp on what's going to be expected. We think that we can absolutely get it through.
Now, because I've heard from a couple of people who were on Planning Commission a while back that there was a story behind all that. And there was difficulty in not having that median strip. So I would think perhaps there should be some history looked into also along that line.
Is there a way to work that crossing with the light that's already up at the top of the hill that's for Great Falls? Because that light already stops traffic. I mean, I'm just wondering, because I've seen intersections that are diagonal, where the streets don't actually meet, but the light works for both. And I wonder- Park. I'm sorry, Park. I'm sorry, I couldn't remember. I was trying to remember which one. It's Park. But it's the light at the top of the hill across from State Theater. Yeah, it's Park. But anyway, I'm just wondering if there's a way to coordinate that in such a way that that light can help. Because I mean, I've seen intersections in Arlington that are kind of diagonal just because of the way that old streets didn't come together.
Yeah, and I guess we actually don't envision that that median break being signalized. When we've looked at it from just a transportation standpoint, it works as an unsignalized access point.
And Park's a little far away. I think
I wasn't
eating
there.
up a lot of space.
Yeah.
Park and Park Place.
I mean, you probably just from outside of rush hour when it queues back to Park, the light at Park actually provides some opportunity for people who are making a left out of there in terms of stopping the traffic on North Washington. So we think it functions just from a traffic perspective.
Okay.
So I think we talked about most of the transportation commitments last time, so I won't belabor that point because I know we're going longer than you probably wanted. City parking lot improvements, just a view of the where our building comes up to the edge of the city parking lot. What we've done is actually proposed to put in a curb line where the existing parking spaces, that angled parking is, and put in sod, grass cover, and some trees. Really trying to, I think, help beautify the existing city parking lot and create a little bit of a softening of the edge of the building.
So are you still using a lot of panels on that side? Is that what we're seeing?
Yeah, so on the north side, the first two floors are all brick, and then you've got brick you can see on the right-hand side. You've got brick that goes all the way up, and then as you get down towards Lawton, there's brick. The portion of the building that is on the property line is still above the second floor, primarily cementitious panel, so the Hardy panel. But it's something that we've heard. We're looking at the design of that particular section of the facade that I think is giving everybody heartburn, and it's something that we're still working on.
I think there's just a real feeling as that you come down the street, you're going to see that. I mean, even if you broke it up so there was another brick, that's a long section of panel. If you broke it up and put some brick in the middle of it, something to kind of break it up.
Yeah, there are a number of options that we're looking at to try and break that up. Just for clarification, so the portion that's sort of that straight shot, that's all corridor. So it makes it a little bit difficult in terms of actually creating some additional articulation there, because then you sort of have that. But we're looking at other ways that we can break that up visually.
Yeah, but those are real windows, right?
They're real windows, yes.
No, we've had,
Yes.
I mean, look at Rite Aid.
No, those are real windows.
Yeah, no, but if you broke it up with materials would help.
Yep.
And I mean, if the project makes it through, you guys have to come back to us for a site plan. And the number one thing we will say to you if you come back with these panels is we can't move forward with site plan until you get rid of some of these panels. So you might as well just accept it that we hate them.
Yeah, we have heard those comments loud and clear, and it's something that we are continuing to work on. Just quickly on Lawton Street, I know we talked about a lot of these issues previously. The building has been significantly redesigned since the initial submission. I think most recently with the suggestion from Ambassador Schultz on flipping the building so you get a better step down coming towards his property at 107 Lawton. was a significant change that we think really improved the transition to the residential neighborhood. It's something that I think we've tried to work very hard on, and we'll sort of run through that in more detail. Obviously, we've got the pocket park in the back that we talked about already, providing some of the transition there and providing an additional setback buffer from the residential neighbors. In addition, the voluntary concessions, we have committed to a number of commitments to help address some of the issues that I think you've heard tonight. Crosswalks on Lawton, helping the walkability. So at Lawton, at East Broad, right now there's no crosswalk at that intersection. We'll be putting in a crosswalk there. We've committed that there will be no balconies facing the neighbors on Lawton Street. No outdoor seating at the corner of Broad and Lawton. Making sure that the transformers that are in the back of the property are appropriately screened so they're not visible to the neighbors. And then I think most importantly, recognizing the cut-through traffic on Lawton Street. We've provided $20,000 commitment for traffic calming on Lawton that'll be implemented by the city to help address some of the cut-through traffic that they're already experiencing, and hopefully make that a much less desirable way for people to try and go through the neighborhood. In addition, on the parking front, we've committed $10,000 to establish a permit parking system on Lawton to make sure that none of the spillover traffic or any spillover parking associated with our project will impact the neighbors on Lawton.
Excuse me again.
Yes.
I hope that, I know you've said there's $20,000 committed to Lawton traffic.
Yes.
And hopefully there will be the city is going to be able to use that, right?
Yes.
Hopefully they will use it also for a crosswalk with the field up there so that there's no difficulties with the young people passing back and forth.
Yeah.
And that could be included in traffic calming also.
It can. I think we've in discussions with the city, it seemed more appropriate for them to go through the process that the city normally goes through in terms of coming up with what the specific
right.
traffic calming measures were. And so we're committed to funding, whatever those efforts lead to.
I know, but that was something I was asked to make sure I mentioned.
Okay.
It's up to you, buddy.
Not typically, but this is somewhat informal. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. My question is related to what you said about the $10,000 for permanent parking on Lawton. Will that prevent families of kids who are using Madison Manor Park from being able to park during like soccer games and stuff?
Yeah, so that is definitely a concern. Excuse me, that's been brought up.
Whoa.
And it's it comes into the implementation of the permit parking and sort of the hours of when that permit parking is actually in place. For us, obviously we're committed to funding that, and I think as the city goes through their process of actually implementing the permit parking system, it's going to be a conversation with the neighbors on Lawton to make sure, and probably the broader community, to make sure that we're both protecting the neighbors on Lawton from spillover parking, but also making sure that there's still appropriate access to Madison Park. So just sort of quickly on the step backs. I know we covered this the last time we were here, but just to sort of reiterate, 107 Lawton Street is here, the Schultz's home. Right now there's an existing masonry wall that runs to about here. As part of the project, we're extending that wall to the edge of the property line so it runs the entire length. We're actually maintaining all of the existing vegetation there and then adding additional vegetation to help with some of the screening for them. The building, since the original submission, has been pulled back significantly. So the first part of the building here is 42 feet from the property line. At that point, it comes up 10 to 12 feet, so significantly less than the 45-foot maximum that would be permitted, and significantly further back than the 20-foot setback that would be called for under the zoning ordinance. After that 10 to 12-foot step back, at 60 feet, the building goes up to a 35-foot height. So again, still lower than the 45 feet that under the T1 zoning, you'd be able to have at the 20-foot setback level. And then as you get further closer to East Broad, it goes up to the full 65 feet. East Broad is a major commercial street in the city, and we felt that that's the more appropriate place for the density on this project. And that's not to say we're not sensitive to the neighbors, right at the corner. And we have pulled the building back from that edge. We've dropped a floor from the original submission at that corner, and we talked about a little bit the creating sort of that ground floor edge where it's a 25-foot height as a pedestrian walking along that edge, and then it's the full height is actually stepped back from that to create a little bit more of a pedestrian scale. Just a visual representation of that. It's a little bit tough to read, but it's purple's December of 2015, March 2017 is in blue, and yellow is October of 2017. So you can sort of see how the building's been pushed back and stepped down over time. This is the frontage along Lawton Street. One of the things we heard from the Tree Commission in particular was trying to add some evergreens along that edge. So that's something that we're working with the city arborist on the planting plan for that edge to make sure we're adding some evergreens there and some additional screening. Just another shot of the street along Lawton. I don't know if I can't remember whether I mentioned it, but all the street trees that are existing on Lawton are being retained. So the building and the sidewalk were pulled back from those trees, but all those trees, the mature trees on Lawton are being saved. And just another shot looking up Lawton Street. From a fiscal impact standpoint, these are the city's fiscal numbers. Right now, there's a current net revenue of $137,000 a year to the city. The projected net revenue under the city's model is between $797,000 and $1.1 million per year. Even if the entire ground floor retail were to remain vacant, you would still see a significant increase in the net revenue to the city over what's there now, just as a point of clarification. From a student generation standpoint, based on the actual student generation numbers from existing projects in the city, you're looking at 40 students that would be generated. And that includes from the sort of Pearson Square, which is a little bit of an outlier that bumps those numbers up. But even including that, you're looking at 40 students. The fiscal numbers are actually probably artificially low compared to what they would be because the city has added a 50% increase in the number of students that could potentially be generated when they arrived at those numbers. So sort of you're never going to get to 60 students here. Even under the sort of the numbers with the inflated Pearson, you're looking at 40, but the numbers actually reflect a 50% increase in students and are still within the range of what the city council is looking for annually from a fiscal standpoint.
Just thinking about that, do we need to have 2 bedrooms with dens? Could those 15 just be 2 bedrooms? Because the problem with Pearson is the dens, really. It's really changed how those condos were used, even though, they're rented now.
Some of them are 3 bedrooms.
Yeah. Is there such a market that you feel like you have to have that den?
There is a market, and I think we agreed to get rid of the 3 bedrooms begrudgingly.
Right, no, I understand.
But there is a market. We're long-term holders of apartment buildings, and we think over the long term, maybe today those are attractive to families, but there also is a large group of people today we think that are attracted to a 2-bedroom den who work from home or who have grown children who live out of the area who come back and want a place that they can, it's not really a bedroom, but it could function as a guest room if needed. We think also the price points, these are not going to be cheap 2-bedroom dens. They're going to be in the high $3,000 to $4,000 range that aren't what a young family who's trying to just move to Falls Church with kids
Right.
can afford.
We
And
were,
that's what
yeah,
they-
we say they'd be better off renting a house at that price.
Exactly. So I mean, that, not that we're trying to discourage kids, but there
Right, no, I
are, you know, just
understand.
by the nature of brand new apartment buildings and the cost of building,
yeah,
they're going to be
yeah,
expensive.
So I don't think in anything I've seen, you guys have shown any, and I know, again, you haven't designed it, like what a typical layout would look like. Are these dens just kind of alcoves?
We can show you some typical, I'm sure MBNA can show you some of theirs that we've done in the past, and I'd say the vast majority of the dens we've built in the past do not function as bedrooms. They function as offices, or it could be a small guest room, and not to say you couldn't put a small child.
Right, but I mean,
in it,
these are
but
doored rooms.
Some are
'cause
maybe
some
doored,
I've seen
some
are
may not be
alcoves
doored.
and some I've
Yeah.
seen have doors. So
And
that's
we've
fair.
done a combination of doored and not doored.
Okay.
So just, and we went through most of these, but just wanted to sort of at a high level run through some of the boards and commissions comments that we received. Obviously, this is not a comprehensive list, but just some of the things that rose to the top as we were going through. The architectural design, I think we talked about that. There's the section of East Broad, that says West Broad, it meant East Broad, that we're still looking at from an architectural standpoint. The north facade we're continuing to look at. We already talked about that. The open space, we're committed to adding that second access point to the plaza and really refining the plaza design and programming and clarifying the hours and the operation of that space. From a transportation standpoint, we're committed to the medium break on North Washington Street. We're committed to a drop-off for residents in Creative Cauldron on East Broad Street, and refining some of the details on the public parking, particularly the hours when that public parking would be open. And then obviously we've got some concerns about the mid-block crossings that I think are shared by a number of the boards and commissions as well. From an environmental standpoint, we talked about we fully understand LEED Gold is desired, and I think that's our goal, and I think we can draft the VCs to reflect that that's the ultimate goal for the project. The tree fund contribution, we're still going through to make sure we can accommodate the tree fund contribution, and then increase landscaping on Lawton Street. We're working with the city arborist to refine the planting plan along Lawton Street.
Did you guys see
Yes.
the Human Services Advisory Council's comments that right now the way the ADUs are talked about in the document is that you guys are going to do it proportional to the dwellings, and they would prefer to have just the studios and just 2 bedrooms straight up, that's just easier for them to deal with?
Yeah, we saw the comments, and we're sort of evaluating what we can do there. I think they also had some comments, sort of interestingly, of trying to provide some lower income units, so either at the 40% of AMI level or the 30% level. The trade-off for that is once you start decreasing the AMI level, the number of units that's actually being provided goes down pretty significantly.
Right.
And so we're looking at sort of what that would equate to if we were to do 30% units or 40% units. So it's something that we're looking at. And then it's just, I think it's going to be a decision for the city council of whether they would rather have the 6% at 60% of AMI or whatever that lower number is at the lower number of.
I think it would be helpful
AMI.
to have a chart.
Yes.
That says, if you do this, you do this.
Yep.
Because what I understand is that we've gotten units that we can't really use that well, and there's just no
Yep.
point in that, no point for you guys to provide them, and no point for us to have them if we can't use them. And it makes a lot of sense if you think about it, that the studios would work well for people who are just
Yep.
single, and the 2 bedrooms would be big enough for the other group, and
Yep.
so.
Yeah, absolutely. And it
Yeah.
was a good conversation with Human Services, so I think it's, we're absolutely looking at that.
Okay.
So that's what we had tonight. We obviously appreciate the comments we've received, thus far from this group, from the other boards and commissions, and are happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. I have a bunch of questions, but let me turn it over to fellow commissioners. Then we'll from right to left.
Well, just one quick comment. I think this is more for the city. On the intersection at Broad and Washington, what I would encourage you to look at is when you're redoing that, take a look at something called LPI, or leading pedestrian indicator, and that's where you reset the lights so that the pedestrian has the first shot when the lights turn. That's done in DC and a lot of other cities, and I think that's a good pedestrian-oriented move. And
Instead of letting the turning vehicles go first.
Right.
Yeah, right.
And with 295 units there, a lot more people walking in that area, so trying to get across a major intersection like that after all the cars turn can be very difficult, so I encourage you to take a look at that.
And of course, I'll follow up on that along with my others. Of course, I'd love everybody to look at the total stop. So you could have diagonal crossing, as there is, that can be done. My main comments have to do with protecting our businesses of Clarendon's, RGS, and State Theater. I want them to have access, to be able to get into the parking lot, which is extremely important. And also, very much, I want real tight agreements on staging and everything else that goes along. I do not want to have our present businesses harmed with the lack of parking. And along with that, I would maybe suggest to work with the EDA and with the city and do some more work with Kaiser Permanente. And if we could, because if we could have parking there and you have parking at your building, that would be good for everybody. But I am absolutely adamant about protecting those three businesses. I just think it'd be a crying shame to get something new and lose what we've got. And so you'd have to put up with me, and I'm sure you'd have to put up with Rebecca and a few others of us. I might seem really nice, but I can get really, I could work up a grill. Anyway, what you really, the other thing is that with Creative Cauldron, has there any been progress with the lease?
We were on our second round of comments. We had a good meeting with them maybe 2 or 3 months ago.
With the new owners of
Sorry, that lease. No, I think
that
the lease
lease
here.
Yeah.
No,
I don't want them to go dark
I
and
don't
then
wanna
have,
speak to that. I don't
and
have
then
information.
they wouldn't be around to go into the space. That I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, and
So keep working, helping them out wherever you can on that one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I just think that that's so important. I think keep working on all the changes and keep the communication going with the residents of Lawton. I still think that somewhere a crosswalk needs to be done upward on East Broad, but that has to be worked out. I know we're working on a median crossing somewhere on West Broad, the 100 block, because that's so long and everything. We do tend to have long blocks. But I think you've done a good job of communicating with the neighbors, but still keep at it because, if there's any changes that can be made, and I did appreciate hearing about that one-story situation there, because that's all in perspective and all the way you look at things. But you'll be back with us, for site plans, so.
Tim, did you have other comments you wanted to make, or it was just about that one?
No other questions or specific comments.
Brent, do you have any comments or questions?
I mean, a lot of the things I was going to bring up, obviously, have been talked about already. I was going to mention the Hardy Plank siding. I think has been beaten. We've beaten that up enough. I won't beat it anymore. The den issue, so that was, I think, flagged by one of the boards and commissions. Something else that I think hasn't been mentioned yet is, I think the transportation folks brought it up. I mean, the voluntary concessions allow for the sidewalk width to go all the way down to 6 feet if there's outdoor seating. And 6 feet is pretty narrow. I think they recommended no less than 8. Something to consider. I think obviously outdoor seating is also a great thing. It enlivens the street. It's a positive, but you do have to, be mindful of still allowing, adequate room for pedestrian traffic. And so I think that 6 may be a little tight. So I would urge you to take a look at that. And the median break situation, I think, has also been talked about significantly. I'll just, echo that I think that's important to figure that out, to not harm the existing businesses and during construction. I think ultimately, in the long run, I think this will be a net positive for a lot of those businesses as far as having all these additional residents who can, run downstairs and patronize these businesses. So I think that's a good thing. But in the interim, they still have to survive the construction and the transition, which is always can be difficult. So, so that's been said. I think I brought this up at the work session. The TDM issue. You're asking for a fairly significant parking reduction. I know that I don't know if there's some of the strategies that we're contemplating for that. Have you thought about how the TDM is going to work? What kind of strategies you're looking at?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the major bases for the TDM is the shared parking between the office, the residential, the retail, creative cauldron. So there's a lot of internal capture where we're making sure that we're actually using those parking spaces to the maximum extent possible. In terms of other
is it like bicycle storage or
yeah, so in terms of other strategies and sort of multimodal, we've got a fairly significant bike component. Interior to the garage for employees and residents, we've got secure bike storage, and then also showers for the employees to use if they're bike commuting to work. We also have a significant amount of visitor bike parking, both on the street, then also internal to the garage, so it's covered. If someone wants to ride their bike there and then get caught in the rain, they don't have to have their sitting out there. We've also committed and set aside space for bike share stations on the frontage for East Broad. So trying to promote the bike transit. It's a pretty easy bike ride to the East Falls Church Metro. Either just down Washington Street, or if you go back through the neighborhoods, it's a pretty easy ride, and we think that there's going to be a fairly sizable bike sort of contingent in terms of people who are living and working there.
Is a shuttle to the metro station included in your package?
We have not included a shuttle. We just, for a project of this scale, we're not sure a shuttle would work, just the economics of it. But what we've talked about is working with some of the other property owners in the downtown area to try and figure out whether there's a potential for some sort of unified shuttle service going to those projects.
I think that would go a long way towards helping you meet that 600 parking space target.
So did, on the Capital Bike Share, were there commitments made about paying for that station or maintaining that station? I know that had been mentioned in some of the documents.
Yeah, so we did receive a comment about paying for the ongoing operational cost of that. I think that's something we're still looking at, sort of as we've gotten through the boards and commissions, and I think gotten the full scope of what the additional contributions that different boards and commissions might be looking for. And so we're sort of weighing those right now.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, as you just mentioned, a really important transportation component and draw to the commercial building and the residential building. I mean, it provides access to the East Falls Church Metro Station in a way that is really important. And you're trying to promote biking. I think this is an important part of that as well. All right, I don't want to take the floor from you.
No, that's it for me. Yeah.
Okay. Melissa?
We talked about this last time. I think Andy, Mr. Rankin, brought it up, and EDA also repeated it. And I think about the additional floor of office. I really believe that if there was an additional floor of office, it would balance the number of apartments much better for us. So I just want to put it out there. I think that would, I think that, since we're not going to, it seems like we're not going to get a real commitment on the retail because of the type of retail you guys want to approach. And I understand that because, you see that with name restaurants, with local kind of restaurants, you just don't know. Like Liberty Barbecue is a locally owned, and you just suddenly, it was coming in. It wasn't like we had a lot of knowledge ahead of time. So I get that, but I think that if we had more office to balance the retail and the number of units, we would feel stronger about the project in general. I also, one thing the EDA said too, is they were talking about retail on the plaza itself. Now, I'm not sure if that would work. I mean, I think we all know that when retail's not visible, it has to be super trendy. Like, sometimes that does work when it's not and people think it's secret. But, so I'm not totally sure that that's a reasonable thing to do, but there may be some things that could be on the plaza that, but I think that goes along with how you're going to activate it. I also wanted to point out, since our last meeting, you had, I think if you remember our exchange where you guys told us we don't need a bank anchor, and you suggested I looked at your Apollo, and of course when I went to the page, the first thing that was in the retail was Whole Foods.
Yep.
I just want to say, FYI, it is still there.
Yes.
And so I don't know if you've replaced the Whole Foods that space or what you have in that space now, but you still have to fix your website.
It's all food.
It is
Yeah,
a
it's
Whole
Whole
Foods?
Foods, yeah.
Because I think at the time you guys said it wasn't.
It was, and that was my error when speaking up here.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't necessarily focus on the Whole Foods aspect, but the other retail that went
Oh, I
along
see what
with
you're
that
saying.
in
So
terms of the type
you guys
of
were
sort
saying
of
you don't
curated
need the Whole
retail.
Foods, but you had suggested you look at
it
this
was
site.
it was more a function of
Okay.
the other retail that was there. But yes, it was confusing because we did not say, oh yeah, and there's a Whole Foods there.
Okay. Well,
So
I don't know.
that's I
think that
fully
this wasn't a
admit
good example of something that doesn't need a big anchor, so.
Rank in.
All right, I got a few things, some of which have already been mentioned, but I think as has been, this horse has been beat to death, but I would suggest even in our recommendation, City Council, that the ability to turn left onto Park Place from southbound North Washington should be operational before
Right.
access to those sites is closed off for
Right.
any reason. So to me, that's conditional, like,
Right.
and if VDOT blocks it, it's a bummer. Got to go back to the drawing board. But I would want to put that in our recommendation.
Absolutely good idea.
Do you know the 40 students coming from the city's math? Do you know, is that based on some blended average? Or I know the city knows like one bedrooms usually generate 2 and 3. Do you know if it's from a blended or if it's broken down?
So it's the 40 students is based on the most recent projects in the city. So there were.
Right, but what I'm saying
there,
is
but
like
it's
the city knows.
and it's based on the most recent year and sort of
Sure, but I'm
previous
saying the
up
city
for-
knows like how many kids come from 1-bedroom units versus 2
Correct.
bedroom
Right,
versus
yes.
3-bedroom. And you can average all that and say, so that means we get X students from an apartment unit, or you could say, hey, we have this number of 2 bedrooms and that's going to be listed. So you see what I'm saying? Like, do you know if it's from a blended number or if they've?
So it's based on they came up with a number for the individual types of units.
Okay.
So the number of
So
students
do you
generated
know,
from
are they
1-bedroom, 2-bedroom.
comparing- Are they, for your 2 bedrooms with a den, do you know if they're using the 2-bedroom number?
They're using the 2-bedroom with a den number.
And so
So
we have,
it is an
how many
apples to
of
apples
those units
comparison.
do we have in the city? I'm just trying to figure out
Yeah.
how reliable.
But the superintendent's putting up those numbers, it's not your numbers.
These are not our numbers. These are from
No,
the
no,
the
and I'm
city.
not, I'm,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out how it's calculated, because
Yeah.
2 bedrooms with a den, I've got kids, I'll make my kids sleep in a den, no big deal.
It won't kill them.
I believe it was .27 for a 2-bedroom and .7 for a 2-bedroom den. So.
But do you know, I know, but
On
you don't
average
happen to know, we have like, what, 4 2-bedrooms with a den in the city? Like, what,
I don't
do we know
think I brought the numbers.
Hold on, I've got the numbers.
Okay.
I mean, it's not scientific. I mean, the city doesn't estimate it, and so there's some.
No, I mean
Absolutely, and
these
there's
numbers are based on the actual students that are there. So
Right, and
2-bedroom,
I'm not
yeah.
saying, and like, to your point, the cost, there's all kinds of things that factor into it. I just want to make sure, or I'm just curious what the number's based on, because it's a pretty big difference. You know, how many students a 3-bedroom attracts versus a 1-bedroom? And I would guess, I mean, I don't know what our sample size is, but I'm guessing 2-bedroom with a den is going to be fairly similar to a 3-bedroom in a, depending on the development it's in.
Well, and currently
There's a
in
big
Pearson,
jump.
I know many families who have a child
Right.
that uses a den as a
Right, but
as their
for
bedroom.
example,
Just to,
We might not have that
yeah,
much
so I guess just in terms of looking at the actual numbers, so there are 98 2-bedroom with dens
In the city already.
in the city already.
That's
And
good stuff.
they have a student generation rate of 0.714 students per unit.
Okay.
There are actually no three-bedroom units, but there are three-bedroom with den units in Pearson, and those generate 1.32 students per.
I have been in a 3-bedroom with no den unit in Pearson. So,
These are the numbers.
like,
that-
I've physically been in.
They do have some 3-bedrooms. It's a very
Okay.
small
Right,
number.
right.
Anyway,
Again,
Or maybe no kids are in them. I don't know.
this was
Could be.
this was the information that was emailed to us from
Sure.
Yeah.
all right.
city staff.
That's
so
cool. I just wanted to get a sense for that.
that's where we're going.
I'm sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
Andy, but
Sure.
But again, but the number of three bedrooms it's sort of irrelevant in terms of whether it's a 3-bedroom or a 3-bedroom with a den, because we don't have any 3-bedrooms in our project anymore, so that doesn't actually get included into the number.
how many do you have? So how many 1-bedrooms, how many 2-bedrooms, and 2-bedrooms with a den?
So right now we have,
As if that's still
Well, they got the
current.
efficiencies, right?
you got, there we go. So we have 33 studio efficiencies, 165 one-bedroom units, and 97 2-bedroom and 2-bedroom with den units.
I'm
You
sorry.
got the breakout.
Yeah, the breakout if you
Yeah.
want. Yeah, it's hard to read. So, went through 33 studios, 145 one-bedrooms, 20 one-bedroom dens, 82 two-bedrooms, and 15
2-bedroom
dens.
den. Got it. All right, here's my next question. The extra floor of office space.
Yep.
What's holding you back from committing to that?
So, I mean, it's an economic issue. I
Okay,
mean,
that's what I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is we don't think there's a market for the
So you-
additional
so-
floor of
So it's
of
holding you back
office.
is the cost to build the extra floor and presumably the parking that we required. When you do crunch numbers, you're like, yeah, we could make money on it, but if we can't rent it out, man, that is a waste of money.
I think it's probably more.
Yeah, I mean, so
complicated than that,
that's the
but,
basic, in a basic terms, that's the issue. There are also some code issues, and I don't know if you want to get into them, with the heights of the
Well-
two buildings being different and
And this is where I'm getting to. Is there anything we could do to make an extra floor of office fit in your plan? We, the city.
I mean, I'm a little sarcastic in my response. Take $1 million out of the proffers, and we could probably have an office.
Well, okay, so that's.
I mean, I'm joking, but I mean,
No, hey,
if we could reduce the costs that we bear for the project, we might be able to consider adding office or doing other things that.
Yeah, and so I mean, to cut the chase, what I'm wondering is if you're thinking like, well, if we build another floor of office, that's, we got to go down another level for parking. And we
that's
said,
part of the issue, yeah.
But we said, hey, we'll give you another floor of office. You don't have to do any more parking.
But at the same time,
Would that-
we'd be concerned that we wouldn't have enough parking for this other floor of office, so we
Okay.
wouldn't want to.
So you agree with our parking requirements?
Well, I mean, we agree that there's, you add 12,000 square feet of office, there's going to be some additional
Sure.
parking.
Okay.
Maybe not at the ratios that the
So
city
I don't think we
requires,
can
but-
knock $1 million off the proffers, but.
That was a.
I know, but
just
like
throwing it
things
out
that
there.
you think we could, like, are there anything, I guess what I'm saying is an extra floor of office, I think would sway a lot of people. And if you guys sit around thinking like, if only those Falls Church guys would let us do X, Y, and Z, we could do that. I'm just saying you should ask, because I think a lot of people might say we could probably do a lot in terms of like certain aspects of it to get that commitment.
And I'm not sure, you want to speak to the code issues, that's a more complicated issue that I'm not sure the city can do anything about.
Height's limited by the type of construction that we're using for the residential. And if you add an additional office to the office building, it gets over that 85-foot limit, so.
And that triggers you to build a residential differently as well?
It triggers probably a whole number of
How does
complicated
the staff
issues.
feel about that? Does that, if the office building was larger by another floor, does that, can't the residential and office be different?
That's probably building code issues
Is
that
it
we
building
can't really,
code?
yeah, we'll
Okay.
have to look into that.
Anyway, stuff like that, like I feel like sometimes we miss opportunities because we get laser focused on something and then you guys have the business realities of it and we're missing an opportunity to say, well, maybe we could tweak our code and say, this is actually one building, so you can go build it this way and that's a.
It's Virginia Uniform Building Code standards.
Well, I'm just.
That issue may be.
Sounds
hard to
like we
solve, but I
don't
hear your
know, so we're
point.
just gonna
Yeah.
assume it's impossible, that's not.
I mean, something we'll think about is what would it
Yeah,
take?
so that's all I'm
to-
saying, is like,
Well, if we can't get the extra office, it would be really great to remove the 2-bedroom dens, because I'm looking at your Fenwick apartment layouts, and this den is almost the size of the second bedroom. I mean, it's significant.
home office, there you go, more office.
Well, right, but I'm fine with the 1-bedroom den, then you can have your home office with a 1-bedroom. but it's a pretty big den.
All right, well, I'll move on, but I'm just throwing out there, if you've got code ideas, like, hey, if only we could tweak the code, and maybe we can't, it's a state thing, or whatever, but I would find that appealing. Has anyone mentioned to you the idea of, and I don't know, this may be a city question, the city lot that backs on there, Park Place, the poorly striped city lot, have we done any looking into somehow almost eating into Park Place, making that part of the parking lot, and getting more parking spaces out of that lot? Do we know
I
if
think
anyone's looked into some of
there has
that?
been.
I know there's a grade issue there as a retaining wall on Park Place.
Yeah.
Staff hasn't looked at it, but I believe EDA looked at that
Right.
question, and there were some drawings and graphics, but I think that needs to be discussed further with management and council. And
I don't know if we could put those guys on the hook for doing that, but it sounds like something.
Just, I think the 85-foot limit changes the construction type. I mean, you're going from, right now, are you using stick construction, what you're proposing here?
Right, for residential.
So it's stick, it's wood, and if you go below 85 feet, and you're using
Yeah, but I'm
steel.
not suggesting we build
Right.
the residential building higher, it would just be the office building.
What would change is the way you build the office building. The office building would not be under putting construction, it would be a standalone building, basically.
Yeah,
From a code
it sounds like a
standpoint.
great idea.
Yeah, if you start with- yeah, the residential will still stay the same.
That's all I'm saying, like, I don't know, build, but I'm not a builder. All right, someone mentioned this, and this also might be a city question. At the Tinner Hill project, there was a lease for Fresh Market. Fresh Market never occupied. Fresh Market paid rent presumably. Does the act of Fresh Market paying rent impact the tax revenue that the city sees? So like, did it financially help us to have a lease, or was that the building itself was more valuable whether it was
We didn't
Fresh
get any
Market
tax
or not?
revenue.
And there's
Sales.
nobody from the EDO here, so they probably know the answer, but.
Well, I mean, the tax revenue, at least the majority of it was based on the revenues from sales. And so that wasn't occurring, so it was a,
But my point, and my
whether we got anything on a lease,
that's my question, right? So like
it was minimal if we did.
Right.
Yeah, right,
Because this is
yeah.
our challenge, right? We had a signed lease with Harris Teeter, we got a Harris Teeter, that's great. We had a signed lease with Fresh Market, we didn't get a Fresh Market. We almost didn't get a Target because Fresh Market had control of the space because they had the lease. And so it almost became negative to us that we had a Fresh Market lease and no Fresh Market. And the way retail is these days, we could thumbs up this thing today, it's gonna be 3 years till someone walks in there, so who are you gonna get to sign a lease who's actually gonna be around in 3 years? Maybe not even Target. So I think it's really hard to say, give me a signed lease before I even approve your building. I do think you can say, hey, design some really nice retail space and maybe do these other things, but I think you'd find very few retail businesses in the world today that's gonna do that. But my point is, I don't think even that. I think we learned our lesson on Fresh Market. You got to be careful. You get a signed lease, and suddenly it's actually locking the space up instead of letting it before. It sounds like you have committed to a rear pedestrian access to the little square.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, that's important. I had a question on the Creative College space. It's on the side. It looks like it has glass that wraps around. It's a theater. They probably want to darken there. What does the inside look like relative to like?
There's a portion where the glass goes around. We don't know exactly how much it will.
Okay.
The point is that's kind of the entry sequence, so you
Okay.
have some glass there.
All right, so you guys have thought through the fact that we're not going to just be putting up like.
Yeah, we're not gonna put like a-
windows,
like a-
the theater black. Yeah, see, that looks really cool, but you're looking at a theater,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, there's always a nice entrance, welcoming entrance there, so they get some glass.
Yeah,
in there.
so the entrance is there. So that's just the lobby.
So it just goes down the side. One of this already got mentioned about the potentially having only 6 feet clear space on the sidewalk if there's outdoor dining. That's not, do you know where that could occur? I mean, on Washington, you guys have that outdoor dining place.
I think that actually may be a remnant from a prior iteration of the plan. I don't think we anticipate
Okay, but I just
going
want to make sure.
under 6 feet. So
Because
we'll,
it's 10 feet clear on Washington
Yep.
with that outdoor dining.
Correct.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
So
fine.
we just need to look at that. We got those comments today, and I think we were trying to figure out where why we had put that in there, and I think it was just a remnant from actually I think probably the first iteration where we actually were looking at some outdoor seating along East Broad Street, which I don't think we're looking at now.
All right. I'm almost done. Only a few more. This is also maybe a city thing. we hate a lot of these special exceptions, and inevitably somewhere in there we start talking about what we could do permit parking for the neighbors, blah, 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 but that seems to be some black box confusing process that sort of has nothing to do with the developers, has to do with however we do neighborhood permit parking. Is there a way for us to tie that together a little bit better so that developers that are doing something that triggers neighbors to want permitted parking could somehow actually help with it versus just kind of be like, I don't know, you know what I'm saying though? There's
No,
some
I mean,
process.
they were talking about it earlier, they're actually, in the VCs have a contribution towards that program, and we have a dedicated staff person.
Okay.
That used to do it in Arlington, that's really good at it.
All right,
And
so-
so we've done it for 301.
Okay, and so part of
forth.
it is cost, and they're chipping in some money, so.
They are.
I think we're chipping in like the money for it.
Okay, I just know in the past, it's always been like with Mason Row, it's like, yeah, we wanted to do something with permanent parking on Park, and everyone was sort of like, well, that's a whole other process, and it was.
I think the answer is it's a little bit complicated in terms of it actually is a separate process and a separate discussion with the neighbors, and I think it's probably more appropriate to have the city lead those discussions than necessarily having the
Yeah, I just want to
developer.
know how it gets done, so that when neighbors
gets
ask, can
triggered.
we do the permanent parking, it's like, yeah. Because I feel pretty strongly like the neighbors can decide how that street parking is permanent. Seems fair, but I don't know how to make sure that happens. I'll leave the hard one for last. This also sort of said mid-block crossing, I get it, it's dangerous, but I feel like we have the need in several places. West Broad right there on my block where I'm in, across from 4 Peaks to the little pocket park is a great example. If we ever get to the point where we establish a standard with the hawk signals and stuff like that, it seems like it would make a lot of sense to have sort of a mirrored one on East Broad. Sounds like the timing maybe won't line up for what these guys want to do, but I think we should get that figured out. You know, clearly we have invested decades of speed traps on Broad Street. Speed is not really a problem on Broad Street very often. So I think you could get.
Where do you been?
I'm just saying, where do you guys get your
Particularly
speeding
on
tickets
East
on Broad
Broad.
Street?
East Broad is a
Right, you start speeding up,
East
but
Broad
but
is
what
a
I'm saying is
speedway.
you throw down a mid-block thing with a big hawk signal, you'll keep traffic slow coming out of downtown and going out East Broad, so we should look at that. All right, here's the hard one. I don't even know what page it is, page 37 I have on the attachment 1D. Anyway, it's the picture of from kind of over top of the ambassador's house back a little bit. And the neighbor on Lawton across the street pointed out that, hey, this is cool, you step down from the ambassador's house, but on my side, I get the full height here. From this drawing, it seems like maybe there's only a couple of units. So my question would be, would that neighbor and the other neighbors be like, all right, this is finally good enough if you knocked off just one more so it steps down even again, just for the length there? I don't know what the height difference would be. Or would that still be unsatisfying to neighbors, or would losing 3 or 4 units somehow break the bank for you guys? Or
I mean, I can't
stick
speak
it
for
somewhere
sort of the neighbors. I mean, they can
Sure.
clearly speak
I
for
wasn't expecting
themselves.
that. Thought they could chime in.
You know, I think from our perspective, we think the project works well in terms of the balance between the residential, the office, the retail, and Creative Cauldron right now. In terms of making sure that you've got the critical mass for the residents and the office workers to support the ground floor retail and some of the surrounding restaurants and State Theater and other things in downtown Falls Church. So I don't think we don't feel like we can start getting rid of additional units on the site.
All right. I think that's the end of my list.
All right. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I had questions about really have been covered, so I'm down to just a few questions. A lot of mine have to do with the transportation and the movement of vehicles that I don't feel like I have a good understanding of. This is not a site plan. I appreciate that we're talking about a special exception application, but I don't really have a good sense of some of the main issues about how loading is going to happen into some of these commercial buildings. I don't have a sense of like where the trash is going to be. I see where it's located in terms of like for the residents and the inside dumpsters. I get that, but how this is going to flow, and my concern is backing up traffic both on East Broad as someone's trying to like make a left, a truck's trying to make a left turn, or obviously the median break, which has been covered extensively. How's the flow working for servicing all these buildings, and how do you see it impacting the traffic?
Sure. So in terms of this is the ground floor plan. So East Broad, North Washington. You've got the access on East Broad and the access coming down from North Washington. The retail and office loading is right over here in this corner, sort of right behind where the retail bays are.
So how does a large truck service that, or is it a fairly large truck?
I can answer that. So let's say the truck is coming in from Broad Street.
You need the microphone.
So that's going to be the truck entrance. That's where we have the height clearance. So let's just say the truck kind of goes and does this, turns around, and then backs into the space. So it's really using the drive aisle that exists for everybody, and then just backs into the space up here. Similarly, there's another one out here that's mostly for residential and potentially for the theater. The truck would enter in, make a right along this aisle, turn around, and then back into that space. So it's using the same drive aisles as the vehicle would. It's not cutting across spaces or not encroaching on spaces. It's just backing in and kind of disappearing from view. When the truck is parked out here, all these aisles will be clear for any passenger vehicles or any customer vehicles to pass through and get to their parking spots.
And we don't envision or that we are going to accommodate the huge tractor trailers.
Right.
And we would write into all our leases, both residential and retail and office, a maximum length truck that would be allowed in the garage.
So there's looks like no potential for it to be held up, other than just whatever it takes to make the left turn on East Broad Street in terms of impacting the traffic flow there. But with a 295 residential units, there's a lot of truck activity in addition. The commercial will have its own. I mean, I personally live in the West Broad residences, and the amount of truck activity is impressive. So I just want to make sure that's being considered. In terms of the trash and trash trucks picking that up, is it the same kind of movement? Is that what we're envisioning?
Pretty much. We have one location here and a location out here. So again, the truck can just come and take a quick ride and get around, get to one, service the other one, and kind of turn around and get back out. One other thing I want to point out is I think we were glad that the res lobby was out here, and it makes sense to do the res loading out here, which is really far away from a lot of the res retail and office activity. So it's kind of tucked in towards the east side of the project, which we thought was a good thing. So a lot of that truck activity would kind of happen more out here. Yeah, I think most of the people want to kind of park in this area here because that's closest to all the access points to Broad and Washington Street.
Yeah.
So I hope that works out.
So this leads to my next question, just so I'm clear on it. This floor is entirely commercial here? Is that how this is laid out? And then the flow through the garage here, where does the residence and when I say commercial, is this also for the office building, or is this also mostly primary for the retail?
It's all combined parking, and so the first floor is primarily sort of the retail public parking. So with the convenience sort of right behind the retail spaces, and then as you go down the ramp to the lower levels, there's two below grade levels, and this the first below grade level. This will be, we envision a combination of both retail public parking and then also the start of the office residential parking. And so the actual office residential parking will have separate gated access to it, so that it's reserved for the residents and for the office workers.
So where do you envision this paid parking element occurring? It's on this floor specifically, the second floor?
So the paid parking, the entrances and exits will be where the pay gates are, and then the public parking will be on this floor and then the floor below.
I didn't follow that. I apologize.
Okay, so
Maybe said more simply, this is all open to the public, this level, and intended for retail.
For retail.
For retail.
You don't have to pay for this.
If you go into one of the retailers, you get a validation, it's free. If you choose to park there and go somewhere else, you pay the rate, the going rate.
Okay.
Most of the second level below grade, up to the point where it's gated for office and residential, is part of that same public retail. And then where the gate start is reserved for office.
It's reserved for office.
And residential parking.
Okay, so the office is not, when you said it was sort of shared parking, it's not it's shared for
It's
just the
within one
retail.
structure, but it's separated out.
But we do think that there's some overflow, depending on the tenants, there may be some office tenants parking in the shared spaces in the retail, but we think the obvious sharing is between office and residential, where residents leave during the day to drive to work, and office workers are coming in to go to work.
Understood. And in terms of pay options, do you have a sense of how much we're talking about? And the reason I care is the incentive to not park in the building and park on the street. So do you have a sense of what we're talking about?
No, I don't want to quote dollars, but our goal is not to make money off the garage, it's to manage the garage so there's parking for the uses when they're in the highest demand, and when they're not, at a fairly nominal rate, it's open to people to pay to park. But the worst case scenario for us is there's an event at the State Theater, it's practically free to park in our lot, everyone parks in our lot, and no one can go to Creative Cauldron or our other retailers because it's all taken up by other users. So we're using automated systems and demand pricing. We'll be able to manage that. It might take a little bit of time to figure it out, but we'll manage that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it makes sense, but it's a new concept in our downtown, or in our city entirely. I had heard in this discussion there was talk about 90 feet at some part of the building. I know it said it was like an average of 85, but where's the 90 foot? I'm assuming it's on the office, this terrace here, but I want to, and so is the reason that it's going 90 is because of extended heights at the lower level? I mean, what's the height at the ground level retail? And I just want to understand like why that additional 5 feet is necessary.
The 85 feet is measured from an average grade plane.
Right.
It's not necessarily the sidewalk at this corner. So the average grade plane, because the site kind of climbs up, is actually higher, almost 4 or 5 feet. So that's why you're getting that 85 feet to 90 feet. If I measure literally from the top of the canopy down to the sidewalk, it is close to 90, but from a building code standpoint, the height will be close to 85.
Okay. I understand the average part. I didn't know. I wanted to make sure it was right here as opposed to on the other side of the residential. Again, I want to reiterate the median break issue that came up. Also, I mentioned earlier about the bike part of it, not just the capital bike share, but internal. The amount, my own experience with living in one of these apartment buildings, the demand for this biking is tremendous. There's like no store. I mean, it's everywhere throughout this other building, and there's still not enough. They're adding more as we go. So I want to be sensitive that it's something that we're trying to promote in the city and that it's thoughtfully considered, because the demand for biking in this city appears to be on the rise through all of our efforts in the city, something I'm really pleased about, and I want to make sure that a property of this nature is addressing that what I believe to be perceived demand for that. And then, again, the other things we've really talked about, I was just curious about, had you guys given any thought yet on the naming of this building, or is it intended to be Broad in Washington still?
We like the name Broad in Washington, but that doesn't mean that we wouldn't be open to naming it something else. We usually don't name them this early in the process, but it's actually my least favorite part of the process because everyone has an opinion and there's never a perfect name. But so that's why we picked Broad in Washington to start, but we'll certainly over time evaluate whether another name makes sense to name the office building something and the residential
We already have one building with
different.
Broad Street in it, kind of, so I think we're good with that right now.
Duly noted.
All right, well, and again, just not to reiterate what everybody else said, not a big fan of the materials on the back of the building, and that's going to be a problem. I think you heard that from us. But overarching, comments beyond these specifics, I think that, for a special exception, I think this is I do think this is an extraordinary building. I think it's a wonderful addition to the city. The utilization on that spot right now in our main intersection, I think it's wildly underutilized and doesn't represent what I want Falls Church to represent. So I'm excited about that. I'm really excited about the commercial element of this. We have plenty of residential units. I appreciate that that's what the market is looking for right now. but to get Class A office space, if we can get another floor, that's, you've heard that from us before, but to have a Class A office space at our main intersection, to me, is the main draw, in addition to the arts and the commitments you guys are making to the Creative Cauldron. So overarching, I'm really supportive of the project, and I do appreciate the changes you've made from our work sessions, even our latest. The articulation on East Broad Street, I think, is a major improvement over what we saw just a few weeks ago. So I appreciate you doing that as well. So I think it's a wonderful addition to Falls Church, and I do hope that you continue to hear the comments from the public. Their concerns are important to us, and I don't think they need. I think it's important that you hear them. It sounds like you've heard them thus far, but we still got a little ways to go on those. There's a number of comments that kept coming up consistently, and those will be important to us as we go forward on the final approval list. But overall, I think it's a wonderful addition to the city, and I'm excited about it.
Thank you.
Coming to our borders. Okay. If anybody has any other comments, feel free, but I think we are ready for a motion. Mr. Rankin had mentioned that he would like to add this median break issue, which has numerous impacts and important to, it sounds like, almost all of us. So I think that's a good addition, but if you want to...
I'd just like to lend my voice to the stretching to get LEED Gold. I think it would help not only this project, which obviously is very prominent, but I think it will be immensely helpful on future projects in the city to keep us moving in that direction, and we like to think of something like that as being part of our brand. So achieving that would be, I think, consequential.
I would second that. I mean, you talked about it, about adding that kind of language as a objective. I think that's a wonderful solution at this point. As I understand the process and how it works, to make that a objective is something that I think is really important to this community, and as Ms. Teets said, to the tenants. I think it's a big issue. So if you want to make that addition, or you want to make the motion, or or you want to edit it in some way? Do you have other comments about it?
Well, I have 4 things that came out of it.
4 things, all right, let's discuss.
That I just thought, like, along with the move to, the recommendation, that the council not move forward without the proper spelling out how public parking will be handled in better detail, because right now we have a minimum parking statement that needs to be the better. That the council review the ADU options to make sure we get units that meet our needs in the proper. That the left turn for Park Place needs to be in place before access to the city's public block behind RG's and Clarendon's is blocked. That language is added in the proffers that the goal is LEED Gold, and that LEED Silver will be met. So that's the 4 things I got out of it that we wanted to make sure happens.
So just before
Why
we go down
mention
this...
silver then?
What?
Why mention silver?
Well, because I think we do want to make sure that at a minimum, LEED Silver is met. I mean, but I think that right now it just talks about LEED Silver, so we definitely want to add that they're going to strive for LEED Gold. But it's up to you. I mean, you can change that. That's just the 4 things I had written down.
What's your concern about the ADUs?
The mix.
The mix is not. They want to look at the mix. The
needs of the city.
Yeah.
In the mix.
Yeah.
With both,
what's the committee? ASH. I never
well,
remember
with
the letters right.
both the Human Services and Housing.
Right. Human Services and
Housing
is concerned that if the mix of units is proportional to what the units are right now, so they get a certain number of efficiencies, certain number of 1-bedroom, certain number of 2-bedroom, that they're not as helpful.
Right.
I'm sorry. Hold on. The language is saying the proportion of ADUs will follow the same proportionate mix for the market rate units in the project. And you're saying that's problematic.
It's problematic because
what
they have found is they can use the efficiencies and they can use the 2 bedrooms, but like they don't want the 2-bedroom dense because the rents are higher on that. And even when you bring in the affordable part of it, the rents only come down so much. And so what they're saying is that, and they were open to that, looking at the mix and maybe changing it, because over time, our housing, city staff have found that there's some units they can find people for and some units they can't find people for that can meet the rent at what the,
So let me ask the applicant, when you say you're open to that kind of, I mean, because this is standard language.
It
I've
is.
seen it,
Right,
you know,
right.
yes,
Right. That's
10
standard.
times.
Yep.
When you say you're open to it, what does that entail for you? What's your understanding of how that would get addressed?
So I think there's sort of two components to it. One is the actual mix of the units. So are we providing just 2 bedrooms and efficiencies, or are we providing, efficiencies, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 2 bedrooms with dens? And that's just, I think, a discussion with city staff and the city council in terms of whether they want the mix of ADUs to match, or if we want to look at adjusting that so that we're providing just the 1 bedrooms and the 2 bedrooms.
Right,
And
so to be specific.
Sorry, the efficiencies.
295 units,
Mhm.
the standard would call for 6% rounded up, so that's 18 units.
Yep.
And the way it's written now, you would take those 18 units, and most of them would be 1 bedrooms, because that's what
Correct.
most of your units are.
Correct.
And what the Human Services Advisory Council
Right.
thank you.
has requested is, hey, instead of doing that ratio, could we get these 18 units where they're either efficiencies or they're 2 bedrooms?
Yep.
Not the 1 bedrooms, the 2 bedrooms with the
Yes.
and all these. And you're saying that aspect, sure.
Yeah, we can.
As long as the total dollar amount's the same.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of comes down to just the, looking at the rents that the city sets in terms of the maximum for each unit type, and just making sure that it's equivalent in terms of how we shift
And that's
it around.
coming in at 60%.
Correct,
Well,
that's at 60%.
right,
So that's the first part.
Right, so then
Yeah.
I had a question with this other part, which is
Yeah.
that the standard, the 6% standard is based on this idea of 60%
Area median income.
medium household
Right.
income.
Right.
And what they've said is, hey, that's a little high, we have trouble filling those. If we drop that down to 40%, then it's fewer units, it's not gonna be 18 units, it's gonna be some number less.
Correct.
Because it's more expensive, because somebody's.
Because it's the sort of it just ties into, what are the maximum rents that the city sets for a 40% unit and a 30% unit.
Right.
And then looking at how that impacts the total number.
And so you're basically saying, if the cost to us is the same, we're up for whatever kind of combo mix we
Correct.
ever want.
Correct.
And what they're saying is that they would take less
They would
units
take
if
less
they
units,
get
right.
units that are better
So somebody needs
or
to
more
do the math.
appropriate to what they can actually fill.
All right, so based on this, I don't know that we need to say anything. They seem agreeable. These guys seem to have ideas.
Well, but I guess what I was
I
just
think
saying.
that needs to go forth to city council, though.
I just wanted,
Right.
what I just wanted to say is like, add on to the motion that
It's fine.
the council review the options
Sure.
and make sure, because right now, what is said in the proffer is it's proportional to units being
Yeah,
provided.
but this meeting's
And so that
recorded.
language
He
is.
just said that.
No, I know, but I just,
It's in the advisory services memo. right?
We're being recorded?
I'm sure that the council will get it, but I just think that this is an important
No,
issue.
I'm fine with that.
Because
I
I've talked to housing staff
I'm just
before
saying,
where they
I don't, it
can't
sounds
actually
like.
get people for
No,
units.
and I agree. It sounds like, what I'm saying is, it sounds like in this
They
meeting
get
right now,
frustrated.
we're not gonna figure out the mix. No.
But it's
No,
very-
I'm not asking to do
no.
that. I'm just saying that, what I said is that,
Yeah, but
that-
Read the HSA.
that the council,
Yeah, exactly.
well, they had what I suggested is that they provide for the council and staff a grid. Like, this is what you get at this different
Yeah, I don't know who
levels.
does the math, yeah, but somebody
Yeah.
should say, well.
Yeah, it's a combination of
18
just getting
units.
the rents from the city staff and then running it through.
Right,
on our-
exactly. But what I do know is like, they don't want the 2-bedroom dens.
Yep.
Because
It's too
they're
expensive.
higher rent, even at 60%, they just can't fill them.
Yeah,
So-
we had so much trouble
All right, I
with
got
West
this issue.
Broad.
I got it.
Okay, sorry.
We're good. We got the ADUs. What were the other 3 that, I just want
had-
to make sure I'm writing them down for this motion.
I had ADUs that the proffer would spell out how public parking would be handled in better detail, because right now we just have this minimum.
Because of the language, you don't like that language.
No, because it's just very up in the air, because it basically said at a minimum, we'll give public parking at a minimum, or something
No, I know
like
you
that.
didn't like that.
Well, and just to, I guess, clarify, sort of, I understand the minimum language, and we can take care of that. But in the voluntary concession, the actual sort of hours of operation are tied to when we come back in for site plan. So when we're coming back before this group and we actually have a better idea of the operations of the garage, the design of the building, and hopefully some tenants lined up, that gives us a better idea of hours of operation. That was when we felt was the more appropriate time as part of that
Okay.
parking management study to set those hours.
So
That was
we can
always the
skip that
intent.
now, but you guys recognize that sentence doesn't make any sense.
It is, just so you're
Yes.
aware, it is one of the key issues identified by staff to review. They have identified 10, I want to get the number right. Yeah, 10 issues that they identify, and number 3 is exactly this. Public parking, greater clarity and details are needed for the proposed public parking. So as part of the motion, have any of these, to staff, have any of these 10 issues been appropriately addressed? Or if they're included in the motion that says, and address the key issues identified by staff in your comments letter, attachment 7, have they already been answered and this is at a date, or these are all still?
They're due
open?
for a response with the revised plans and submissions, and those revisions they're working on now.
Okay, so I mean, so let me just go through this list, and maybe they're already captured in
Yeah,
here.
that's fine.
So we got ADUs, public parking, clarity, what was the
Right,
one?
the left turn.
Access,
Yeah.
park
What
place.
we're calling median break or
Yeah.
whatever.
I would just
okay?
call it access.
The goal being lead gold,
Lead, okay.
and,
Do they have diamond?
and then reviewing the ADU options
So.
to make sure that we get units that can actually work well.
Just give me a second to make sure this is all captured. And it does not appear to be, the lead issue's not captured.
This is an environmental section.
The ADU, I do not see, but we discussed it. And I don't see the median break either. So,
And that's so important.
yeah, I just don't see it here. So
Before
it's not.
anything
It's actually,
starts.
these are different than the staff by and large. So I just wanted to make sure we weren't being repetitive. Do you want to make the motion, or?
Well, and Mr. Rankin would love to do it, I'm
Oh.
sure.
I don't care either. I would entertain a motion. Let me say that, whoever.
I was
would like-
all for the motion when it was just one thing.
What do
but
you
now
think, the
that-
motions?
That's getting too
Yeah, I mean,
complicated.
we can have discussion on the motion if there are issues with
The motion
the one that's
itself.
made. We should.
Well,
Go for it, Melissa.
so wait a minute, are we going to add in that we want to see the staff issues resolved?
I think that's because it was not part of the proposed motion. I think that's
Issues
smart.
The
resolved. What's-
proposed motion is just this very simple
I
thing.
don't have that memo up anymore. What's
know.
the date of it?
I'm-
Sorry.
You want the staff letter?
Yeah.
Attachment, it's attachment 7.
Attachment
November
7.
8th, 2017.
Okay, so let me give it, so then we need to talk about the lead, gold,
I think. So.
ADU.
What are you going to say about, well, make the motion, we'll discuss.
Okay. Okay, so, the planning commission moves, wait a minute, I'm looking at this motion real quick. The planning commission provides a recommendation of approval for TR 17-17, TO 17-09, and TR 17-18 to the city council, scheduled for public hearing and final action on April 9, 2018. The planning commission asks that before the council move forward, that the staff issues in attachment 7 be resolved. That additionally, the proffers clearly show that LEED Gold is the goal for the building. That the proffers also show, the proffers also show that a median brake will be placed for a left turn for Park Place, and that will be in place before access to the city's public lot behind Argias and Clarendon's is blocked. And that we suggest that the council review the options for ADU units to make sure that the units that we receive will meet the needs of the housing staff in helping our citizens have affordable housing.
You want to do public parking, clarity? Or you
Well,
feel like
that was in that memo.
Okay, you're right, it was.
I'll second it.
We have discussion on this motion. But I want to, I think that's the perfect motion as it relates to what's listed here on this paper. But I want to be clear to the public and specifically what these TR 17-17 is and TO 17-09 and TR 1718. They are like the nuances of this, but haven't really been discussed by us. So before we vote on it, I want to read these specific items because we reference them by number. So TR 17-17 is the resolution to amend the comprehensive plan of the City of Falls Church, Virginia, to change the designation of approximately 2.68 acres of land located at 100 North Washington Street and 127 and 131 East Broad Street. It has the real property code numbers. From business and transitional to mixed use on the city's future land use plan map on application by Broad and Washington, LLC. TO 17-09 is an ordinance to amend the official zoning district map of the City of Falls Church, Virginia, by rezoning a total of approximately 0.90 acres of land at 131 East Broad Street from T1 Transitional District to B2 Central Business District on application by Broad and Washington, LLC. And finally, TR 17-18, resolution to grant a special exception for residential uses within a mixed-use development project and to increase the building height with a bonus of 15 feet to a maximum height of 90 feet for a mixed-use development project on approximately 2.68 acres of land located at 100 North Washington Street and 127 and 131 East Broad Street on application by Broad and Washington, LLC. All right, that's just what you referenced, just so it's clear and in the record. All right, do we have, want to discuss the
I'll make
motion?
I'll discuss it briefly. I mean, just to speak to some findings, I mean, based on those specific, the specific requests, I mean, first of all, the comprehensive plan change, which kind of is the underlying, is the foundation that allows the rest of this to happen. I think there's some justification for that because otherwise, I mean, I know there was some concern by neighbors about the fact that this is zone transitional, the easternmost parcel. I think the fact that this has been consolidated, we're always looking to consolidate our smaller commercial parcels. The fact that this has been consolidated, if that parcel was not included and left in its current state, you'd have an orphaned parcel in a building that would be difficult to redevelop in the future, and we'd be left with an orphaned parcel. I think that the difficult thing here, obviously, is treating the transition, but I think it's for the greater good to consolidate that parcel now when that is feasible, whereas if that opportunity is missed now, it's gone forever. You'll be left with an orphan parcel. So I can see some benefit, and the comprehensive plan can be amended when it's allowing for something like this for a consolidation. And so then that leads to the rezoning part of it, and again, I think that's supported by various elements of the existing comprehensive plan, specifically the small area plans, and so I think there's a foundation there for that. And then the special exception criteria, which we've kind of talked about that in general today, but I think that the applicant has demonstrated that they meet the special exception criteria, and the staff does a good job in their memo of going through that. But I think they do that through exceptional design and through many of the other elements that have been talked about at length tonight. But I think suffice to say, I think that I feel comfortable that they meet that criteria. So just want to get those things on the record, but I think overall, I think this is a positive for the city. I think obviously anytime, all of our commercial areas directly abut residential, and it's always a challenge to deal with that transition. Every single, with the exception of perhaps the high school site, every single commercial area we have, by the nature of the way the city is geographically arranged, directly abuts residential, and typically very low density residential. You go from our most dense commercial to our lowest density residential in a very short distance, and treating that interface is always a challenge. I think this applicant has done a very good job of working through that process. Is there continual tweaks and fine grain work that can continue to be done? Yes, and there should be, but overall, it's moved in a direction where that they're treating that Lawton Street edge fairly well, considering where they started from and where they wound up, and trying to be respectful of the low-density character there and protecting that neighborhood. So I also think that's a big positive overall. So with all that said, I'm going to support the motion. I think this is a good thing for not just this immediate part of the city, which is the heart of our downtown, but for the wider city as well.
Yeah, I agree with those comments.
Nicely said. Thank you.
I'll just add on to that. that the anxiety that the neighbors expressed is understandable, but the areas that the city has to develop commercially are very limited, and yet our need couldn't be greater at this point since we're facing some $200 million of debt. So I just find that the need for commercial development of this type is very urgent right now, and so that will lead me to support this.
Any other discussion? All right. Given that, Ms. G, can you call the roll? Roll call vote, rather.
Ms. Hockenberry?
Yes.
Mr. Krasner?
Yes.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Teets?
Yes.
Mr. Wodiska?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
All right. Thank you to everyone who came and the applicant. Yep.
Deborah, I wrote it out. I'll give it to you.
Bless you.
Very good, Melissa.
Before I forgot exactly what I said.
Still playing basketball out there?
I don't think so.
They finished a lot of periods.
You have to continue that.
Kids retired from regular
Yeah.
basketball this year, so.
We're going to continue Jefferson, so that guy gets up and get the show done.
Yeah.
How does that fit in that lot?
I think they turned it back on
That was the 900 meeting guy.
but I think it was probably on.
Yeah, I bet money, though.
You know.
He's not going to come up with any pictures.
All right, as much as we wish, we are not quite done with this meeting. So let's move to get some of this last minute stuff through.
Let's move it.
This is good.
Item E was the 900 Lincoln Avenue subdivision application. We need a motion to continue this to a date certain, which I believe has been proposed by staff to be February 5th.
So move.
Can I get a second for that?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, excellent. Any nays? Great.
Just vote against the
The next action item is a recommendation for a continuance to a date certain, suggested to be March 5th, for the 116 East Jefferson Street subdivision application. We had, never mind, I was thinking about the 900. Like,
I think, if I could comment?
Yep, please.
The date certain, we've already continued these both once, so now we're doing it twice. We are going to resend all the property owner notices, so the official notices. So the date certain is not as critical now. If we were continuing that notice, which we've already done once now, so we're not going to continue it again, we're going to reissue it. So I would say on the 116 East Jefferson, maybe not put it off 6 weeks. Let's go ahead and just say we're recommending continuance of it and to date to be determined.
So then we'll advertise later.
And then we will advertise that appropriately at the time.
Okay.
Send them the right.
We got one issue we're working on there, and it may take us longer than, or shorter.
I'm going to make it to that. I'm making it.
That'll give us flexibility, so
Okay,
consider that. Thank you.
that's a, absolute. Okay, so I need a motion to recommend a continuance for 116 East Jefferson Street to a date to be determined.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Excellent, unanimous. All right, moving to other business, the approval of the minutes. Any comments on that? I had one.
I have one, too.
Let me find them.
Yeah, Melissa, why don't you go first while I
All right.
find my meeting minutes?
Okay, so for some reason, at least in the copy I pulled up, I'm not getting numbers down the side. I don't know why, but anyway, on page 14,
I got numbers.
I didn't get some, I don't know, I'm not showing numbers. I don't know, who knows? I am using a Kindle Fire because that was the easiest thing to grab out of my house today.
Yeah, that's the answer. You answered your own question.
Well, but it
Okay, what
shows
line?
everything else.
what-
But anyway, on page 14, towards the bottom, it said that Mr. Starr reported that Ms. Teets and Mr. Krasner had worked to make everyone happy with the issue before the planning commission. I think actually it would be Ms. Teets and Mr. Krasner worked to keep the neighbors informed with the issue, because I don't think they're happy.
No.
They're
Happy
probably
is not the word.
So let's go
Might
with
be too
informed instead of happy.
too optimistic.
Yeah.
So my page 14 is
Yeah.
the last page.
Mine too. So I'm a
Oh,
little
okay.
confused.
See, I'm totally messed up then.
But I can search for it.
Well, it's just that it's the section, it's in the Planning Commission report, second paragraph, last sentence.
Okay, thank you.
What page is that? I mean, if you see it,
That's line 445.
got it.
Okay, yeah, line 445.
446, I got it.
Or
whatever.
446, it's both kind of. But anyway, it's not, it basically, it's just to make everyone happy, we work to keep neighbors informed with the issue. Akita knows that. Informed was the best we could do.
Any other comments? I had one.
Akita got the informed one too.
I see them looking at jogger.
This was on line 204.
She just called me yesterday and talked to me for an hour.
It says, Chair Wadiska stated that he was glad to get vote on this proposal, which is not perfect, is the best solution possible without perfection. And I think what I was trying to say, if I didn't say it precisely, was which, while not perfect, appears to be a good solution.
Mhm.
That's all I had.
I have two.
Oh, wow.
We have to put on our calendar. We have to put on our calendar.
Just a vote on it?
On line 393,
I don't know.
it has me talking about the FARs and stuff. I'm not actually really sure what this paragraph means.
We missed that.
So I would just, I'd be fine with just striking it, or I guess I could try to go back and watch the video. But I remember talking about FAR, and I think I was talking about if it was for the whole site or if it was just the 10 acres, but I didn't, I don't know that I noted that increase in the FAR would be difficult to do.
So you want to strike the paragraph?
Yeah, if that's possible. And then I had one other minor one, which is down in the
holiday that people might.
Mine doesn't show that even.
Planning Commission reports. Line 453. I think this is meant to be the Economic Working Group, because I didn't go to the EDA meeting. I don't think I was.
Yeah, I remember
So I
that.
think I said something like that.
You said that and you corrected
This
it.
Economic Working Group, yeah. So that's a minor one. Otherwise, looks
tired.
Okay.
Well,
let the record reflect that the chair's tired.
Anything else? All right.
Just on the calendar, just to avoid any confusion, it says 5 March, Tuesday, but it's actually a Monday.
Oh, that's good. Before we answer that, do we need to vote on the calendar, or do we need to, what do we, it says action, right?
That's what I had.
Action on the calendar, what action do we need to take on it, other than say we
Just
received
to
it?
approve it.
I think we have to approve the dates, so that people know
Okay,
when
so-
when we're supposed to have meetings.
Any other issue, Mr. Stevens, about that? All right, so with the change of noting that March 5th is a Tuesday?
It's a Monday.
Monday, not a Tuesday. Can I get a motion to approve the 2018 calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No one.
I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Oh, wow, we're jumping all over the place.
Yeah, but we have to do both.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
I didn't want to forget.
Any opposition or abstentions? Abstentions is really what I'm asking. Hearing none, I think everybody's here.
Yeah, we were.
Okay, Planning Commission reports.
We're too tired.
Before we get to the reports, can we put in a request to the community center not to turn the heat off during the meeting?
They're watching.
And I'm sure it's on automatic because they're normally closed at 10 o'clock. And so I'm sure it's automatic, but if that could be resolved, I think it'd make us all a little happier.
We are not going to meet in this space again this year.
Oh, okay.
Shut the heat off all the time.
Okay.
Her comments got no second, so.
So we're strictly gonna be up at the school board?
To the best of my knowledge at this time.
So we're up, good, because I don't like being cold.
Any other Planning Commission?
I went to watch
reports?
night, it was cold.
I went to watch night too, it was really cold.
It was, but I think all the restaurants were full. And people were around, and I think it was quite successful for, you know, and just many, many thanks to Barb Cram and everybody else who put in so much work on it. And it was, I think it was even better than, you know, the years before, and the lighting was wonderful, and so it was pretty darn great, but it was cold.
It was cold. Yeah, it was a really nice night under the circumstances. The weather. All right, planning director's report.
Yes. Briefly, on your next meeting on February 5th, we have one of our speaker series, Northern Virginia Conservation Trust, and we also have the CIP scheduled, presentation, public hearing, and work session, and then we have the one subdivision we just continued. So that would be our agenda on the 5th of February.
CIP, here we come.
And then I also, there are so many announcements to share with you that I typed them up, and you have them before you to take home. I will just highlight them very quickly. Tomorrow, we have City Hall groundbreaking at 9
I saw
a.m.
that got postponed.
Only if it snows.
Only if they don't open
Only
on
if it's
time.
certain,
Got
yeah.
it. Okay.
They're going to make the call in the morning.
Mine
then-
almost never delays the city.
And then on Saturday, February 10th, they're not in order. The city council is planning a retreat, and they're interested in the top priority items from the various board and commissions in advance of the retreat. Paul Stoddard with our group will be coordinating and facilitating that council retreat. So in the interim, maybe we can generate a short list of some things that you're interested in. Then on Sunday, January 28th in the afternoon, there'll be an open house in the campus development project in the community center. So we'll get a time for that. And then on February 2nd, which is a Friday, DDS and other staff will be moving to our temporary one-year office space over at 400 North Washington. We'll be occupying the space over there. Then I noted, you may have seen in the paper, a reorganization we had of the Department of Development Services. We've added economic development under our umbrella in our department now, and there's been some management staff modifications, and I've listed those there. And then also Lee Goldstein started work today as a project manager for the campus development project. I think we're calling it the West Falls Church Project now. And he's an employee of Alvarez Marcel, and he's on site at City Hall. So he'll be managing that project.
So now you guys have to be DCPEDS. That's pretty
Yeah.
long.
Something like that, so.
We're not rushing out to get new business cards.
So, anyway, I just wanted to share those with you.
Thank you.
Well,
And
congratulations to all involved.
Mr. Snyder, being in attendance, congratulations to you for your new responsibility, expanded responsibility. Lucky you. This
Comes with a big race.
the council retreat reminds me that we need to think about hours. I don't want to do it tonight, but next meeting, if we could bring our calendars. Last year we did it like March 20th, I think it was. So in that sort of general vicinity, I think that worked well. My thought is we do it just as we did before, meet a little earlier, do it wherever we're meeting these days. But just think about when we want to do it so we can reserve the calendar and not
Yeah,
book anything
Be
on that
careful,
day.
spring break.
I mean, I don't want to work through it now, literally,
Right,
it's too
right.
late, but I want that to be on the agenda to discuss our retreat. I don't want to
Absolutely.
miss that. Okay. Anything else? All right, we're adjourned.